Welcome to Zen Mind Temple. Tonight, you will discover a powerful secret, the path to mental peace known to Zen masters for millennia. Over the next 3 hours, we'll traverse ancient koans and natural wisdom, letting chaotic thoughts fall like autumn leaves. Adjust your pillow, let your body fully relax, and now breathe deeply with me. Feel the air caress your nostrils as you inhale. Release all tension as you exhale. Close your eyes for a moment and let the weight of your body settle deeper into the surface beneath you. Feel the points of contact where your shoulders meet the mattress, how your legs rest against each other, the gentle rise and fall of your chest with each breath. Now, imagine we're standing at the edge of a forest path as the first light of dawn seeps through the canopy above. The air carries the earthy scent of damp soil and pine needles, fresh with the memory of night rain. Somewhere in the distance, a stream murmurs a soft, persistent sound that has echoed through these woods for centuries. We walk toward that sound, our footsteps muffled by layers of fallen leaves. The path curves gently, and suddenly the trees part to reveal a clearing where sunlight spills in golden patches. There, before us, flows a mountain stream, narrow but lively, its waters clear enough to see the stones at the bottom. The current tumbles over them with a musical rhythm, a song that has played since long before any human ears heard it. On the bank sits a monk, his posture relaxed yet attentive. His robes are simple, dyed in the soft gray of storm clouds, and his bare feet rest in the cool grass. He's been sitting here for hours, perhaps days, watching the water as it moves around the stones. Not with the restlessness of someone waiting, but with the quiet curiosity of a child encountering something new. Notice how the water behaves when it meets an obstacle. It doesn't stop, it doesn't argue, it doesn't demand that the stone move. Instead, it flows around gentle, persistent, adaptable. Over time, this patient movement transforms the stone itself. The rough edges soften, the sharp corners round, until even the hardest granite becomes smooth as polished jade. This monk, whose name is Huineng, has traveled far to reach this place. He came seeking answers to a question that had troubled him for years. Why do we suffer when life meets us? With resistance? Why does the smallest obstacle, a harsh word, a delayed plan, an unexpected loss create such turbulence within us? As he watches the stream, something begins to shift in his understanding. He notices a particular stone near the center of the current, larger than the others, its surface already worn smooth, but there's a story in that smoothness. Once, this stone was jagged, unyielding, full of angles that would have cut a hand that touched it. The water didn't fight these edges. It simply flowed over and around them, day after day, season after season. The resistance wasn't in the water, but in the stone's initial roughness. And through the water's persistence without force, the resistance gradually dissolved. Do not resist what is, Huineng whispers to himself, and the words feel like a key, turning in a lock. This is the first lesson of the pebble by the stream. Resistance creates suffering, but adaptation brings peace. Let yourself sink deeper into this image. Imagine your mind as the stream, and your thoughts as the stones. When a difficult thought arises, a worry, a regret, a judgment, what happens? Do you fight against it, like a stream trying to push a stone upstream? Or do you let your awareness flow around it, like water finding its path? The Buddha taught this truth more than 2,500 years ago. In the Dhammapada, he said, "Mind is the forerunner of all phenomena. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him, like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox." Dhammapada 1. This is not a statement of blame, but of cause and effect. When our minds resist what is, when we try to force reality to be different from what it is, suffering follows, just as naturally as a wheel follows an ox's step. Modern psychology helps us understand why this happens. Our brains are wired with what scientists call a negativity bias, a tendency to focus more on negative experiences than positive ones. This served an important purpose in our evolutionary past. Noticing threats helped our ancestors survive. But in modern life, this bias can make us fixate on small irritations, turning them into major sources of stress. We ruminate on a harsh comment, replay an awkward conversation, or worry about a future that may never come. This ruminating activates what neuroscientists call the default mode network, the part of our brain that's active when we're not focused on the present moment. It's the mental space where we dwell on the past and future, where we construct stories about ourselves and others, and where much of our anxiety is generated. When we resist a thought or emotion, we're actually feeding energy into this network, making the thought stronger and more persistent. Think of it like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The more force you apply, the more powerfully it pushes back. The moment you release your grip, it rises to the surface and floats away. Huineng watched the stream until midday. A family of deer emerged from the trees, pausing to drink at the water's edge, their ears twitching at the sound of the current. A dragonfly darted back and forth, its iridescent wings catching the sunlight. The monk noticed how all these things existed in harmony with the stream, neither fighting nor controlling it. They simply adapted to its presence. He thought about his own life, how he had struggled against illness as a young man, resisted the teachings of his first master because they didn't fit his expectations, fought against feelings of inadequacy. When he compared himself to other monks, each time, the resistance had created only more suffering. Water does not resist the stone, he mused. It accepts the stone's presence and finds another way. Why can't my mind be like that? This question holds the second lesson. Acceptance is not surrender, but wisdom. To accept something does not mean you approve of it, or that you stop working for change when change is possible. It means you acknowledge reality as it is in this moment, without adding layers of judgment and resistance that only create more pain. The Buddha expressed this in the Majjhima Nikaya. What is the way to the end of suffering? It is just this: the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Majjhima Nikaya 117, right mindfulness sati in Pali, which means to remember or to be aware, is the foundation of this path. It is the practice of being present with whatever arises, without clinging or aversion. This is exactly what the stream demonstrates: complete presence with what is, without judgment. Let's take a moment to practice this kind of presence now. 10 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely. Hold it for just a moment. Then exhale slowly through your mouth, feeling the air brush against your lips as it leaves your body. As you breathe, notice any points of tension in your body. It might be in your jaw, where you've been holding a tightness without realizing it, or in your shoulders, which have crept up toward your ears. Perhaps in your hands, which are curled into fists. With your next exhale, imagine that tension melting away, flowing out of your body like water downstream. Now, bring your attention to your thoughts. What's present right now? It might be a to-do list for tomorrow, a memory from earlier today, or a vague sense of unease. Whatever it is, simply notice it without judgment. Imagine that thought as a stone in the stream of your awareness. Don't push it away. Don't grab onto it. Just let your awareness flow around it, like water finding its path. Breathe deeply again. Inhale peace. Exhale resistance. 12 minutes elapsed. Huineng stayed by the stream until evening. As the sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he noticed something else about the stones. Each one was unique not just in size and shape, but in how it had been worn by the water. Some were smooth all over. Others had interesting grooves where the current had flowed more strongly. Some were rounded, others retained a hint of their original form. The water hadn't tried to make all the stones the same. It had respected each stone's individuality, adapting its flow to meet each one differently. This is the third lesson. Life's challenges shape us uniquely, and our responses to them become part of who we are. Just as no two pebbles are worn the same way by the stream, no two lives are shaped identically by experience. Our struggles, losses, and difficulties leave their marks, but so do our joys, connections, and moments of growth. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are subject to change. In the Anicca Sutta, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purification. Samyutta Nikaya 2.13. Impermanence Anicca in Pali means that everything is in a state of flux, including our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. The stone changes, the stream changes, we change. Resistance often comes from our desire to hold on to what is pleasant, or push away what is unpleasant, forgetting that both will naturally pass. Modern psychology supports this understanding. Research on emotional regulation shows that accepting emotions rather than suppressing or avoiding them leads to better mental health outcomes. When we acknowledge our feelings without judgment, they lose some of their power over us. They become like stones in the stream, present, but not controlling the flow. As night fell, Huineng built a small fire on the bank. The flames danced and crackled, casting shadows on the water. He thought about the day's lessons and how they might apply to the suffering he saw in the world. The anger, the fear, the endless striving for things that could never bring lasting happiness. He thought of a farmer he had met on his journey who had been devastated when a storm destroyed his crops. "Why did this happen to me?" The farmer had cried, his hands clenched in frustration. Huineng had no answer then, but now he understood. The question itself was the problem. The storm simply was, like the stone in the stream. The suffering came not from the storm, but from the farmer's resistance to it. This is not to minimize pain or loss. When we experience something difficult, it is natural to feel grief, anger, or sadness. These emotions are part of being human. The suffering arises not from the emotions themselves, but from our struggle against them, from our refusal to let them flow through us. Like water around a stone. Huineng picked up a smooth pebble from the bank and held it in his hand. It fit perfectly, cool and comforting. He thought about how this stone had once been part of a mountain, perhaps, and through the forces of nature had found its way to this stream. How many years had it taken for the water to smooth its edges? He didn't know, but he felt a deep respect for the patience of the process. "Transformation takes time," he said aloud, and the words seemed to hang in the air before being carried away by the breeze. This is the fourth lesson. Growth and healing happen in their own time, through consistent, gentle effort. The stream doesn't rush the transformation of the stone. It works quietly, persistently, without hurry or frustration. So too with our minds and hearts. Change doesn't happen overnight, but through the daily practice of awareness and acceptance. Let's return to our breath now, as we prepare to move into tonight's practice. 18 minutes elapsed. Take 3 deep breaths, each time feeling your belly expand like a balloon filling with air. With each exhale, imagine releasing any remaining tension, any last traces of resistance. Notice how your body feels now, perhaps heavier, more relaxed, more connected to the surface beneath you. Notice how your mind feels maybe quieter, more spacious, less caught up in thought. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the stream of awareness. Tonight's practice. As you drift towards sleep tonight, imagine your mind as a stream. When thoughts arise, see them as stones in the water. Your only job is to let your awareness flow around them, without pushing, pulling, or judging. If you find yourself getting caught up in a thought, if you're fighting against it or clinging to it, simply notice that and gently return to the image of the stream. Feel the current of your breath carrying you forward past any obstacles. Remember that the stream doesn't need to be perfect. Sometimes it will flow quickly, sometimes slowly. Sometimes the water will be clear, sometimes cloudy. All of these are part of its nature, just as all thoughts and feelings are part of your nature. As you practice this, you may notice something profound. The stream and the stones are not separate. They exist in relationship to each other, each shaping the other. In the same way, your thoughts are not separate from your awareness of them. They arise within it, are carried by it, and eventually pass through it. Peace comes not when the stones disappear, but when we stop struggling against them. It comes when we realize that we are the stream, vast, adaptable, and capable of containing whatever arises without being defined by it. Before we move to the next story, let's carry this image with us. The sound of the stream, the feel of the smooth pebble, the understanding that resistance is the only obstacle to peace. As we prepare to leave Huineng by his fire, listening to the water song, remember his final realization. The stream does not seek peace. It is peace simply by being what it is. So too with you. Peace is not something to be found outside yourself, but something to be recognized within, always present, always available when you stop resisting the flow of your own experience. Take one last deep breath and let it carry you forward, like water moving gently downstream. As the sound of the stream fades gently in your awareness, let yourself be carried forward by the current of your breath. We move now from the forest's edge to a small wooden hut nestled at the foot of a mountain. The air here is different, rich, with the aroma of roasted tea leaves and aged wood. Smoke curls softly from a stone chimney, blending with the mist that clings to the mountain slopes like a delicate veil. Inside the hut, a single lantern casts a warm glow over earthen walls. A low table sits in the center, its surface worn smooth by years of use. On it rests a simple clay teapot and 2 cups, their glaze imperfect in the way that speaks of careful handmade craft. This is the dwelling of Zen Master Nanin, a man whose eyes hold the quiet wisdom of someone who has spent a lifetime observing the workings of the mind. A young scholar sits across from him, his posture rigid with eagerness. He has traveled for weeks to reach this remote place, carrying with him a stack of scrolls filled with his notes on Buddhist philosophy. His robes are fine, his hair neatly tied, and there is a restless energy about him, as if he is already formulating his next question before the current one has been answered. I have studied all the major texts, Master Nanin, he begins, his voice carrying the pride of one who has memorized countless teachings. I understand the principles of Dharma, the way, or the teachings, and karma, action and its consequences. But I am told there is a deeper understanding to be found in Zen. Please instruct me. Nanin says nothing in response. Instead, he reaches for the teapot and begins to pour tea into the scholar's cup. Steam rises in thin wisps, carrying the scent of jasmine. The cup fills quickly, but Nanin continues pouring until hot tea spills over the edge, running down the table, and onto the scholar's robes. Stop, the scholar exclaims, leaping back from the table. Can't you see the cup is full? No more will go in. Nanin sets down the teapot, his movements slow and deliberate. He meets the scholar's eyes with a calm gaze. You are like this cup, he says softly. You come to me with your mind already full of your own knowledge and opinions. How can I show you anything new when there is no room? In that moment, something shifts in the scholar. His face flushes with embarrassment, but beneath that, there is a flicker of recognition, a quiet understanding that has been waiting, unrecognized, for this very moment. This is the story of the empty cup, one of the most beloved koan. In Zen tradition, a story that invites us to consider what happens when we approach life with a mind already filled with assumptions, judgments, and preconceived ideas. Let yourself settle into this image. The warmth of the lantern light, the scent of tea in the air, the tension in the scholar's body as he realizes the truth of Nanin's words. Notice how your own body responds. Do you feel a tightening in your chest, a resistance to the idea of emptying yourself? Or do you feel a softening, a sense of possibility in the idea of making space? The Buddha taught about the importance of letting go of attachment to views and opinions more than 2,500 years ago. In the Kalama Sutta, he advised, do not go by revelation or tradition, by hearsay, by scripture, by logical conjecture, by inference, by analogies, by agreement through pondering views, by probability or by the thought. This contemplative is our teacher. When you know for yourselves that something is unwholesome and harmful, abandon it. Anguttara Nikaya 3.65. This teaching invites us to approach all knowledge, not just spiritual teachings, but all aspects of life, with a beginner's mind willing to examine each experience fresh, without the filter of what we think we already know. This is the essence of the empty cup, not a rejection of knowledge, but a recognition that true understanding requires space to grow. Modern psychology helps us understand why this is so challenging. Our brains are pattern-making machines, constantly, taking in new information and fitting it into existing mental frameworks. This is efficient. It allows us to process the world quickly and make decisions based on past experience. But it also creates what psychologists call confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out information that confirms what we already believe, and to ignore or discount information that contradicts it. This bias is particularly strong when it comes to our self-image and our core beliefs about the world. We build elaborate mental structures around who we think we are, what we think we know, and how we think the world should work. These structures provide a sense of stability and identity, but they also create a prison of sorts limiting our ability to see things as they are, rather than as we expect them to be. Neuroscientists have identified a network in the brain associated with this kind of rigid thinking, the task-positive network, which is active when we're focused on specific goals and using established mental frameworks. While this network is essential for many tasks, it can become overactive, making it difficult to shift perspective or see new possibilities. The practice of emptying the cup is essentially a practice of quieting this network, creating space for a more open, flexible way of being, what neuroscientists call cognitive flexibility. This is the ability to switch between different ways of thinking, to adapt to new information, and to see situations from multiple perspectives. It's associated with lower levels of anxiety and depression, better decision-making, and greater emotional resilience. Let's take a moment to experience this for ourselves. 35 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in through your nose, feeling the air expand your ribcage. Hold it for a count of 3, then exhale slowly through your mouth, making a soft ah sound as you release dot as you breathe. Bring to mind a belief or opinion you hold strongly, something you're absolutely certain is true. It might be about yourself, about other people, or about how the world works. Now, imagine for a moment that this belief is like water in a cup. What would it feel like to set that cup down, even for a moment? Not to reject the belief, but simply to hold it lightly. Rather than gripping it tightly, notice what happens in your body as you do this. Do you feel a sense of fear or uncertainty as if letting go of this belief would threaten your sense of self? Or do you feel a sense of lightness, a widening of possibility? Take another deep breath, and with your exhale, imagine making just a little more space in your mind, like pouring out a small amount of water to make room for something new. This simple act of questioning our assumptions, of recognizing that even our most cherished beliefs are just mental constructs, is the first step toward the empty cup. After the scholar's initial embarrassment faded, he sat back down, his posture noticeably softer. "Teach me," he said, his voice now free of arrogance, "how to empty my cup." Nanin smiled. "It is not something that can be taught," he said, "only experienced, but I can show you the way." He picked up the teacup that had spilled and emptied it into a small basin. Then he refilled it carefully, stopping just before it reached the brim. "The emptying begins with noticing that the cup is full," he said. "Most people spend their lives unaware that their minds are overflowing with assumptions they have never questioned." He handed the cup to the scholar. "Drink," he said. The scholar took a sip, and as the warm tea touched his lips, he realized that he had never truly tasted tea before, not like this. In the past, he had approached it as a ritual, an accessory to intellectual discussion. Now, with his mind momentarily emptied, he experienced the tea directly, the warmth spreading through his body, the subtle notes of jasmine, the way the flavor changed as it moved across his tongue. "This is mindfulness sati," Nanin said, as if reading his thoughts. "Not just awareness, but awareness without the filter of your own story. This is the second lesson of the empty cup. True perception happens only when we set aside our mental constructs and meet reality directly. The world is constantly presenting itself to us in fresh, new ways, but we often miss it because we're too busy interpreting it through the lens of what we already think we know. Think of a time when you experienced something completely new, a place, a person, an activity. In those first moments, before you had time to categorize and judge, there was a quality of openness, of wonder. This is the empty cup, the experience of life without the overlay of past conditioning. The Buddha described this direct experience as vipassana, insight meditation, a practice of seeing things as they truly are, not as we imagine them to be. In the Satipatthana Sutta, he taught, just as if a skilled butcher or his apprentice, having killed a cow, were to carve it up into pieces with a sharp knife, a monk contemplates the body as body, whatever its position, whatever its posture. Daigan Nikaya 22. This graphic metaphor invites us to look deeply, beyond surface appearances, at the true nature of experience. Like the butcher who sees the cow not as a single entity, but as a collection of parts, the practitioner of vipassana sees experience not as a fixed story, but as a constantly changing flow of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. Modern psychology. Research supports the benefits of this kind of mindful observation. Studies have shown that mindfulness practice reduces activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain associated with rumination and self-referential thinking, and increases activity in areas associated with present moment awareness and emotional regulation. This helps explain why mindfulness is so effective at reducing stress and anxiety. It interrupts the cycle of overthinking and brings us back to the present moment, where most of our suffering cannot exist. As the afternoon turned to evening, Nanin and the scholar sat in silence, drinking tea and watching the light change through the hut's small window. The scholar's initial restlessness had faded, replaced by a quiet calm. He had not come seeking silence, but in this empty space, he was beginning to recognize something more valuable than any answer he could have been given. "Tell me," he said finally, "how do I maintain this emptiness in daily life? When I return to the world, my mind will fill up again with worries and opinions." Nanin poured more tea, his movements as deliberate as before. The cup does not stay empty by itself, he said. It requires regular emptying. Just as you would wash a cup after using it, you must learn to clear your mind after each experience. He pointed to the mountain visible through the window, its outline softening as the sun set. The mountain does not hold on to the sunlight, he said. When the sun sets, it lets go, making space for the moon and stars. So too must you learn to let go of each moment as it passes, without clinging. This is the third lesson. Emptying the cup is not a one-time event, but a practice, something we return to again and again. Just as the scholar's mind would naturally fill up with thoughts and opinions once he left the hut, our minds will naturally accumulate mental clutter as we move through daily life. The practice is not to prevent this, but to notice when it happens and gently return to openness. This ongoing practice is what the Buddha called anicca, the recognition of impermanence. All things arise, exist for a time, and then pass away, including our thoughts, feelings, and even our most cherished beliefs. Clinging to them is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the more quickly it slips away. Neuroscience confirms this impermanence at the most basic level of brain function. Our thoughts and perceptions are the result of neural networks firing and connecting in ever-changing patterns. There is no fixed self or mind that remains constant. Instead, our experience of ourselves is a constantly shifting process. Like a river that is never the same from one moment to the next. The practice of emptying the cup is essentially a practice of aligning our awareness with this natural flow of experience, recognizing that each thought, feeling, and perception is temporary, and that our sense of self is not defined by these passing phenomena, but by the awareness that observes them. Got as night fell, Nan-in lit more lanterns, their light creating pools of warmth in the growing darkness. The scholar packed his scrolls, but his movements were slower now, more deliberate. He no longer felt the need to rush, to fill every moment with activity or thought. "Before I leave," he said, "may I ask one more question?" Nan-in nodded. "What is the most important thing I can do to cultivate this empty mind?" Nan-in picked up the empty teacup and held it up to the light. "Notice when it is full," he said. "That is all." This simplicity is the fourth lesson. The practice begins with awareness. We don't need to empty our minds through force or effort. We simply need to notice when they are full, and in that noticing, we create space. Like the scholar who could not see his own mental fullness until the tea spilled, we often need a moment of clarity, a spilled cup to wake us up to the ways. Our own assumptions limit us. Let's return to our breath now as we prepare for tonight's practice. 52 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, counting to 4 as you fill your lungs. Hold for a count of 2, then exhale slowly, counting to 6. Feel the sensation of the breath as it moves in and out, a physical reminder of the constant flow of life, always new, always changing. With each inhale, imagine you are breathing in space, making room in your mind for whatever arises. With each exhale, imagine releasing any thoughts or beliefs that are no longer useful, making space for new understanding. Notice how this feels. There's no need to force anything, just a gentle invitation to let go, to make space, to return to the natural openness that is always present beneath the layers of mental clutter. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the Empty Cup Meditation. Tonight's practice. As you prepare to sleep, imagine your mind is a cup. Notice what it contains: worries about tomorrow, regrets about today, plans, judgments, stories about yourself and others. Now, imagine setting this cup down. You don't need to pour anything out forcefully. Simply notice what's there with a sense of curiosity, not judgment. With each breath, imagine tilting the cup slightly, allowing whatever is ready to be released to flow out. It might be a small thing, a trivial worry, or a passing irritation, or something larger, like a long-held belief that no longer serves you. You might notice resistance as you do this. That's natural. Our minds cling to what is familiar, even when it causes suffering. When you feel this resistance, simply acknowledge it, like Nan-in acknowledging the scholar's initial frustration. Remember that you're not trying to empty the cup completely. That's not possible, nor is it desirable. Thoughts will continue to arise, just as the scholar's knowledge and opinions did not disappear, but transformed. Instead, you're cultivating a relationship with your mind that is more flexible, more open, less defined by what it contains. As you drift towards sleep, return to the image of the empty cup whenever your mind feels full or restless. Let it be a reminder that you are not defined by your thoughts, but by the awareness that holds them. That beneath the ever-changing contents of your mind, there is a space of pure awareness, clear and open, like the empty cup waiting to be filled. Before we move to the next story, carry this image with you. The simple clay cup, empty and ready, holding the possibility of whatever comes next. Remember Nan-in's final words to the scholar. Wisdom is not found in the answers, but in the space between them. In that space between thoughts, between breaths, between moments lies a peace that is not dependent on anything outside of you. It is the peace of the empty cup, the quiet awareness that remains when everything else has come and gone. Take one last deep breath and let it carry you into this space, light and open, ready for whatever comes next. Let the image of the empty cup linger with you as we move now to a new setting. The scent of tea fades, replaced by the earthy aroma of turned soil and growing things. We find ourselves in a small village nestled between rolling hills, where the morning air still holds the coolness of night. Before us stretches a garden, its rows neat and purposeful, bursting with the vibrant greens of young vegetables and the soft colors of flowering plants. At the edge of this garden stands an old farmer, his hands calloused from decades of work, his face weathered by sun and wind. His name is Takeshi, and this garden has been his life's work. For over 40 years, he has risen with the sun to tend these plants, nurturing them from seeds to maturity, protecting them from pests and drought, celebrating each harvest as a gift. This morning, however, there is no celebration in Takeshi's eyes. He stares at the sky, which has darkened unexpectedly, clouds gathering in thick, gray masses that block out the sun. The wind has picked up, rustling the leaves with an urgency that sends a shiver down his spine. He knows what is coming, a summer storm, sudden and fierce, the kind that can flatten crops in minutes. Not today, he mutters, already moving into action. Not when they're so close to harvest. He rushes to the shed, pulling out stakes and tarps, anything that might protect his precious plants. His hands move quickly, almost frantically, as he drives stakes into the ground around his tomato plants, their branches heavy with ripening fruit. He stretches tarps over the delicate lettuce beds, weighting the edges with rocks. He ties up the bean stalks, already bending under the increasing wind out as he works. His breath comes in short, sharp gasps. His heart pounds in his chest, and there's a tightness in his shoulders that he doesn't even notice. He's thinking of all the hours he spent here, weeding, watering, fertilizing. He's thinking of the family who depends on this garden for food, for income. He's thinking of how unfair it would be for all that work to be destroyed in a single hour. The first drops fall as he's securing the last tarp large, heavy drops that splatter against the dry soil. Takeshi looks up, squinting against the stinging rain, and for a moment, he allows himself to hope. Maybe it will pass quickly. Maybe it won't be as bad as he fears. But then the sky opens, and the rain comes down in sheets, so thick that it's hard to see more than a few feet in front of him. The wind howls, tearing at the tarps he's just secured. One by one, they rip loose, flapping wildly before being carried away by the gusts. The stakes he drove into the ground bend and break under. The force of the storm god Takeshi fights back, rushing from one damaged section to another, trying to repair what's broken, to save what he can. But it's useless. The rain is too heavy, the wind too strong. With each new attempt, he expends more energy, grows more frustrated, feels more powerless. This can't be happening, he shouts into the storm, though the words are carried away before. They even leave his mouth. I worked too hard. He slips in the mud, falling hard on his knee, but he barely feels the pain. All he can feel is anger at the storm, at the injustice of it all, at his own inability to control what's happening. Then, as suddenly as it began, something shifts. Maybe it's the exhaustion. Maybe it's the realization that he's fighting a force far greater than himself. Takeshi stops struggling. He stands in the middle of his garden, letting the rain soak through his clothes, letting the mud cake on his hands and knees. He looks around at the plants he's spent so much time nurturing, now bending and breaking under the storm's fury dot, and in that moment, he laughs a sound that starts deep in his belly, part joy, part sorrow, part acceptance. He laughs at the absurdity of trying to control the weather, at the arrogance of thinking that his will could somehow override the natural world. This is the first lesson of the garden in rain. There is a difference between caring and controlling, between effort and attachment. Takeshi cared for his garden deeply. That's why he worked so hard, why he tried to protect it. But when his care turned into a need to control, into an attachment to a particular outcome, it brought only suffering. The Buddha taught this distinction. In the Dhammapada, just as a bird escapes from a net, so should you escape from attachment. Dhammapada 290. This doesn't mean we shouldn't care deeply about things, but that we should avoid becoming trapped by our attachment to them. We can tend our gardens with love and diligence, but we must also recognize that ultimately, we cannot control the weather. Modern psychology helps us understand why this attachment to control causes so much suffering. Research shows that humans have a fundamental need for control, a sense that we can influence our environment and outcomes. This need served an important evolutionary purpose, helping us survive and thrive. However, when this need becomes excessive, when we believe we must control everything to be safe or happy, it leads to anxiety, stress, and disappointment. Psychologists call this control illusion, the tendency to overestimate our ability to control events. This illusion is reinforced by our brain's pattern-seeking nature, which often leads us to see connections where none exist, to believe we're in control when we're actually just lucky or unlucky. The storm is a powerful metaphor for the many. Things in life we can't control: illness, accidents, the actions of others, the passage of time. Our attempts to control these things are as futile as Takeshi's attempts to control the rain. And just as Takeshi's struggle only exhausted him and left him more frustrated, our struggle against the inevitable drains our energy and creates suffering. Let's take a moment to feel this truth in our bodies. 1 hour, 10 minutes elapsed. Close your eyes if they're not already closed, and take a deep breath in through your nose. Feel the air fill your lungs, expanding your chest and belly. Hold it for a moment, and exhale slowly through your mouth dot as you breathe. Bring to mind an area of your life where you feel a strong need to control, to make sure things turn out a certain way. It might be your job, your relationships, your health, or even small daily routines. Notice how this need to control feels in your body. Is there tension in your jaw, your shoulders, your chest? Is your breath shallow or rapid? Do you feel a sense of urgency or anxiety? Now, imagine for a moment what it would feel like to soften that need just a little. Not to abandon care or effort, but to release the rigid attachment to a specific outcome. With your next exhale, imagine letting go of some of that tension, some of that need to control. Feel it leaving your body with the breath, like steam rising from a hot surface. Notice how this feels. There might be a sense of vulnerability in letting go, but there's also likely a sense of relief, a lightening of the burden you've been carrying. This is the freedom that comes from distinguishing between what we can control and what we can't, between effort and attachment. As the storm continues, Takeshi walks slowly through his garden, no longer trying to fix anything. He watches as the rain pours down, as the wind bends the plants to its will. And as he watches, he begins to see things he hadn't noticed before. He sees how the rain is soaking deeply into the soil, reaching the roots that his watering can never quite reach. He sees how the wind is thinning the overgrown sections, allowing more light to reach the plants below. He notices that some plants, those with deep roots, those that have grown strong and flexible, are bending but not breaking, adapting to the storm rather than resisting it. This is how it is, he says to himself, the words mixing with the sound of the rain. Growth requires both sun and rain. Strength comes not from never bending, but from bending without breaking. This is the second lesson of the garden in rain. Adversity has its own wisdom, its own purpose. Just as the storm brings challenges, it also brings life-giving water. It tests the plants, revealing which are strong, which are weak, which need to be replanted elsewhere. It reminds us that growth is not always comfortable, that strength comes from overcoming difficulties, not avoiding them. The Buddha recognized this truth in his teaching of the Four Noble Truths, the foundation of his Dharma. The first truth is that life contains suffering, dukkha, but this is not a pessimistic statement. It's a realistic one. Suffering is part of the human experience, just as storms are part of the natural world. The second truth is that suffering arises from craving and attachment, from our resistance to what is. But the third and fourth truths offer hope, that suffering can be ended, and that the path to ending it is the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes the practice of upekkha equanimity, or balance in the face of both pleasure and pain. Modern psychology research supports the benefits of this kind of equanimity. Studies have shown that people who are able to accept difficult experiences rather than resisting them have better mental health outcomes, including lower levels of anxiety and depression. They also tend to be more resilient, better able to bounce back from adversity. This resilience isn't about being unaffected by difficult events. It's about being able to experience them fully without becoming overwhelmed, and then to move forward. It's like Takeshi's plants bending with the storm, but not breaking, and continuing to grow when the sun comes out. As the afternoon wears on, the storm begins to ease. The rain slows to a gentle drizzle, and the wind dies down to a soft breeze. Takeshi walks through his garden again, this time with a different perspective. He sees damage. Yes, some plants are broken, some are flattened, some will never recover. But he also sees life. The rain has washed away the dust, leaving the leaves a vibrant, deep green. The air is fresh and clean, carrying the scent of wet earth. And in the soil, he knows, new seeds are being watered, new life preparing to emerge. He thinks about previous storms, about how each one taught him something, what plants could survive, how to better prepare, when to let go. He realizes that his garden has never been static, never been perfect. It has always been in a state of flux, responding to the changing seasons, the varying weather, his own changing knowledge and skill. This is impermanence anicca, he remembers, a phrase he'd heard once from a traveling monk. Everything is changing always. The only constant is change itself. This is the third lesson of the garden in rain. Impermanence is not an enemy to be fought, but the natural rhythm of life. The garden grows, thrives, is challenged, and renews itself just like our lives, our relationships, our thoughts and feelings. Resistance to this natural rhythm is what creates suffering, neuroscience confirms. This understanding at the most fundamental level. Our brains, our bodies, the cells that make up our being are constantly changing, dying, and being replaced. The thoughts we have now are not the same as the thoughts we had an hour ago, or will have an hour from now. Everything is in a state of flux, whether we notice it or not. The practice of accepting impermanence is not about resignation, but about aligning ourselves with this natural flow. It's about recognizing that just as the storm will pass, so too will our moments of difficulty. And just as the garden will renew itself, so too can we. Takeshi spends the rest of the afternoon not in despair over what's been lost, but in practical action. He removes the plants that can't be saved, knowing they'll nourish the soil as they decompose. He gently props up the ones that can still recover. He makes notes about what worked and what didn't, what he might do differently next time. There's a calmness in his movements now, a sense of purpose without urgency. He's no longer attached to a particular outcome. He's simply doing what needs to be done in this moment. As the sun begins to set, breaking through the clouds in a burst of golden light, Takeshi sits on the edge of his garden, his hands clean. Now, his body tired but not tense. He watches as a rainbow forms in the distance, its vibrant colors arching over the hills. A neighbor, seeing him sitting there, calls out from the path, "I'm sorry about your garden, Takeshi." All that work. Takeshi looks up, smiling. "It's just a garden," he says. "It will grow again, and I'll learn from this storm as I've learned from all the others." The neighbor nods, but Takeshi can see that he doesn't quite understand. That's okay. Some lessons can't be explained, they have to be lived. This is the fourth lesson of the garden in rain. Wisdom comes not from avoiding difficult experiences, but from meeting them with an open heart and mind. Takeshi didn't gain his understanding by having a perfect garden. He gained it by weathering storms, by losing plants, by learning to distinguish between what he could control and what he couldn't. The Buddha expressed this in the Majjhima Nikaya, just as a skilled elephant trainer would train a young elephant. Gradually, step by step, I train people gradually, step by step. Majjhima Nikaya 53. Growth and understanding happen incrementally, through experience, not through theory alone. Each storm we weather, each difficulty we face, offers us an opportunity to practice this kind of wisdom, to meet life on its terms, rather than our own. We don't have to seek out suffering, but when it comes, we can meet it with awareness, with acceptance, with the understanding that it is part of the natural cycle of growth. Let's return to our breath now, as we prepare for tonight's practice. 1 hour, 27 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, counting to 5 as you fill your lungs completely. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, counting to 7 as you release. With each breath, feel yourself sinking deeper into relaxation, deeper into the present moment. As you breathe, imagine yourself standing in Takeshi's garden after the storm. Feel the cool, damp air on your skin. Smell the earthy scent of wet soil. Hear the gentle drip of water from the leaves. Notice how the light looks different after the rain. Brighter, clearer, more vibrant. In this moment, there is no need to fix anything, to control anything, to change anything. There is only what is the damage and the beauty, the loss and the potential for new growth. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the Garden of Acceptance. Tonight's practice, as you drift towards sleep tonight, imagine your mind as a garden. Notice what's growing there. Beautiful flowers, sturdy plants, perhaps some weeds. Notice the weather patterns, the sunshine of happy thoughts, the rain of difficult emotions, the storms of worry and fear. Your job is not to control the weather or to force the garden to be perfect. Your job is simply to be the gardener present, attentive caring without attachment. When a storm of difficult thoughts or emotions arises, practice what Takeshi learned to do. Stop struggling against it. Let yourself feel it fully, without judgment, without trying to make it go away. Notice how it affects you, but remember that it is temporary, like all weather. As you breathe, imagine your awareness as the sun that will eventually break through the clouds. It doesn't fight the storm. It simply waits, knowing that its time will come again. When you notice yourself clinging to a particular outcome, to a specific way you think things should be, gently remind yourself of the difference between care and control. You can tend to your garden with love and attention, but you cannot control the rain or the sun. As you drift deeper into relaxation, repeat silently to yourself, I am the gardener, not the weather. I can care without controlling. I can accept without resignation. Remember that just as Takeshi's garden was not destroyed by the storm, but transformed, so too can your experiences, even the difficult ones, become sources of growth and wisdom. They may change you, but they do not define you. Before we move to the next story, carry with you the image of Takeshi sitting in his garden after the storm, watching the rainbow, knowing that growth and change are always possible. Remember his final realization. The garden teaches me more when it's imperfect than when it's perfect. In your own life too, the difficult moments, the storms, the challenges may be your greatest teachers if you allow yourself to learn. From them, take one last deep breath and let it carry you forward, like the gentle rain that nourishes the earth, like the sun that follows the storm. As the image of Takeshi's garden fades, let the sense of calm after rain stay with you. The earthy scent of wet soil gives way to the subtle aroma of sandalwood, and the sound of dripping water transforms into the soft rustle of bamboo leaves. In a gentle breeze, we find ourselves in a quiet courtyard, surrounded by wooden buildings with curved roofs that seem to flow like water. This is a Zen monastery, a place where time moves to the rhythm of bells and breath. In the center of the courtyard stands a large bronze mirror, its surface polished to a perfect shine. It is mounted on a simple wooden frame, facing east to catch the morning light. Around it, a group of monks has gathered, their robes the color of deep forest greens and quiet grays. They stand in silence, their attention focused not on each other, but on the mirror and on the figure standing beside it. This is Master Beijing Huai, a teacher known for his ability to distill complex truths into simple images. His hair is white, tied back in a simple knot, and his face is lined with the wisdom of years, but his eyes are clear and bright, like a child's. He holds a small cloth in his hand, and as the monks watch, he begins to polish the mirror, though it already seems perfect. Look closely, he says, his voice calm, but carrying clearly across the courtyard. What do you see? The monks lean forward slightly, their breath quiet. In the mirror, they see the sky, pale blue with a few wispy clouds. They see the bamboo that lines the courtyard, its leaves moving gently in the wind. They see their own reflections, standing in a circle around the mirror. I see the sky, Master, says one young monk, his voice tentative. And the bamboo, and us. Beijing nods. And what do you not see? The monks fall silent, thinking. Finally, an older monk speaks. I do not see the mirror itself, Master. Only what is reflected in it. Exactly, Beijing says, setting down his cloth. The mirror itself is clear, empty. It has no color, no shape, no substance of its own. Yet it reflects everything that comes before it, without judgment, without attachment, without holding on to any image. He gestures to the mirror. Watch. As he speaks, a bird flies across the sky, and its image appears briefly in the mirror, then is gone. A cloud passes overhead, and the mirror reflects it, then releases it. A breeze stirs the monks' robes, and their reflections shift, then settle. The mind is like this mirror, Beizhang says. In its natural state, it is clear, empty, luminous. It reflects whatever arises, thoughts, feelings, sensations, without clinging to them, without pushing them away. But most of us do not experience this natural clarity. Why? He picks up a handful of dust from the ground and sprinkles it onto the mirror's surface. The clear reflections are obscured, clouded by the fine particles, because we allow dust to accumulate, he says. The dust of attachment, the dust of aversion, the dust of ignorance, of not seeing things as they are. This is the first lesson. Of the mirror, the mind's natural state is clarity. Confusion arises when we allow emotional dust to accumulate. Like the mirror, our awareness is inherently clear, capable of reflecting experience without being disturbed by it. But just as dust clouds the mirror, our habitual patterns of clinging and resisting cloud our minds, creating suffering. The Buddha taught this truth in the Prajnaparamita Sutra, where he described the mind as khamti, not in the sense of being, nothing, but in the sense of having no fixed nature, no inherent existence. It is like the mirror, which has no color or shape of its own, but can reflect all colors and shapes in the Diamond Sutra. He expressed this as, all conditioned phenomena are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, or shadows, like drops of dew, or flashes of lightning. Contemplate them thus. This teaching invites us to see our thoughts and feelings as reflections in a mirror reel in the moment, but not fixed, not permanent, not defining of the mirror's true nature. Modern psychology helps us understand this dust, the patterns of thought and emotion that cloud our natural clarity. Research on cognitive behavioral therapy shows that many of our emotional difficulties arise from cognitive distortions, irrational beliefs, negative thought patterns, and habitual reactions that distort our perception of reality. These distortions function like the dust on the mirror, creating a filter through which we experience the world. For example, catastrophizing, assuming the worst will happen, colors our experience with unnecessary fear. Personalization, taking things personally that have nothing to do with us, creates resentment and hurt where none needs to exist. Neuroscience shows that these patterns are reinforced by neural pathways in the brain, formed through repetition. Each time we react in a certain way, each time we cling to a pleasant thought or push away an unpleasant feeling, we strengthen the neural connections that make this reaction more likely in the future. Over time, these pathways become like grooves in a record, guiding our thoughts and emotions in predictable, often unhelpful patterns. Let's take a moment to notice the dust in our own mirrors. 1 hour 45 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in through your nose, feeling the air cool as it enters your body. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly through your mouth, releasing any tension you're holding. As you breathe, bring to mind a recent emotional reaction, a time when you felt upset, angry, or anxious. It might be something small, like a minor irritation, or something larger, like a significant disappointment. Notice the thoughts that accompanied this emotion. What stories did you tell yourself about what happened? What beliefs about yourself or others were activated? Now, imagine these thoughts as dust on a mirror. They are not the mirror itself, just particles that have accumulated on its surface. They obscure the mirror's natural clarity, but they do not change its essence. With your next exhale, imagine wiping away some of this dust, just a little, enough to let a little more light through. Notice how this feels, to recognize that your thoughts and reactions are not who you are, just temporary phenomena passing through your awareness. This recognition is the first step toward cleaning the mirror of the mind. After sprinkling the dust on the mirror, Beizhang turns to the monks. What must we do to restore the mirror's clarity? He asks. Clean it, master, several monks reply at once. Exactly, Beizhang says. But how? If we scrub too hard, we might scratch the surface. If we use harsh chemicals, we might damage it. What is the proper way to clean a mirror? He picks up his soft cloth again and begins to wipe the mirror gently in slow circular motions. We clean it with care, he says, with gentleness, with attention to what is needed in each moment. We do not fight the dust. We simply remove it without anger or frustration. As he wipes, the mirror's surface gradually clears, the reflections, becoming sharp and bright again. This is the practice of meditation, he says. Not to empty the mind, not to suppress thoughts or feelings, but to gently wipe away the dust of attachment and aversion, moment by moment. This is the second lesson of the mirror. Clarity is restored through gentle, consistent practice, not force or effort. Just as harsh scrubbing would damage the mirror, trying to force the mind to be clear through willpower or effort only creates more tension and resistance. Instead, we cultivate clarity through practices like mindfulness, which allow us to observe our thoughts and feelings without attachment, gradually loosening their hold. The Buddha described this practice as satipatthana, the establishment of mindfulness. In the Satipatthana Sutta, he taught, a monk remains focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. Digha Nikaya 22. This putting aside greed and distress is not a forceful action, but a gentle turning away from attachment and aversion, like wiping dust from a mirror. Modern psychology research supports the effectiveness of this kind of mindfulness practice. Studies have shown that regular mindfulness, meditation reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain associated with the fight or flight response, increases activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with executive functions like attention and decision-making. This helps explain why mindfulness is so effective at reducing stress and emotional reactivity. It helps us respond to situations with clarity, rather than reacting automatically. As Beijing continues to speak, a breeze blows through the courtyard, carrying a few leaves and a little more dust, which settle on the newly cleaned mirror. The monks watch as a small smudge appears, obscuring part of the reflection. See? Beijing says, gesturing to the smudge. Cleaning the mirror is not a one-time task. It is a practice because dust is constantly settling. The wind brings new. Dust, life brings new thoughts and feelings. This is not a problem. It is simply the nature of things. He wipes the new smudge away with a single gentle stroke. The practice is not to keep the mirror perfectly clean forever, but to notice when dust accumulates and to clean it gently, without judgment or frustration. This is the path of awakening. This is the third lesson of the mirror. The practice of clarity is ongoing because life is ongoing. Just as dust will always settle on a mirror exposed to the air, thoughts and feelings will always arise in the mind. This is not a failure of practice, but the very material of practice. The point is not to prevent dust from settling, but to develop a relationship with it that is free from struggle. Neuroscience confirms this understanding, showing that the brain is constantly generating thoughts and feelings, even when we're not aware of them. This is the default mode network in action, the brain's resting state when it's not focused on the external world. Rather than trying to shut down this network, which would be impossible, mindfulness practice helps us relate to its activity with greater awareness and less attachment. As the morning sun rises higher, Beijing leads the monks in a simple meditation practice. They sit in a circle around the mirror, their posture upright but relaxed, their eyes soft or gently closed. Beijing instructs them to focus on their breath, but to also notice when thoughts arise like dust settling on a mirror. When a thought arises, he says, simply notice it. Say to yourself, thinking. Then return to the breath, gently, without judgment. This is how we clean the mirror, by noticing the dust without becoming lost in it. The monks sit In silence for a time, the only sounds the rustle of bamboo, the distant call of a bird, and the soft breath of those gathered. A few monks shift uncomfortably, their minds wandering, but each time, they gently return to the breath, as Beizhang has instructed. After a while, Beizhang ends the meditation with a soft bell. The monks open their eyes, and he asks, "What did?" "You notice?" One monk says, "I noticed how quickly my mind wandered, Master. It was like trying to hold water in my hands." Beizhang smiles. "And what did you do when you noticed it wandering?" "I returned to my breath," the monk says, "again and again." "Then your practice is perfect," Beizhang says. "Not because your mind did not wander, but because you noticed when it did and returned gently. This is the whole of the practice. This is the fourth lesson of the mirror. The imperfection of practice is perfection. The mirror does not become clear because it is never dusty, but because it is cleaned whenever dust appears. In the same way, our minds do not become clear because thoughts never arise, but because we learn to notice them without attachment, returning to the present moment again and again. The Buddha expressed this in the Udana, where he said, "Just as in the great ocean, there is but one taste, the taste of salt, so in this Dharma and discipline, there is but one taste, the taste of liberation." Udana 5.5. This taste of liberation is not found in a mind without thoughts, but in a mind that relates to thoughts with clarity and freedom. As the morning wears on, the monks disperse to their various tasks, but the mirror remains in the courtyard, reflecting the changing sky, the moving bamboo, the passing clouds. Beizhang stays for a while longer, sitting beside it, watching as the light shifts and the reflections change. A young monk returns, hesitantly, as if he has more to ask. "Master," he says, "what if the mirror is broken? Can it ever be made whole?" Again? Beizhang considers this for a moment, then says, "A broken mirror still reflects. Each piece, no matter how small, retains its inherent capacity to reflect. Even in pieces, it is still a mirror." He looks at the young monk with kindness. The mind is like this. No matter how broken it may seem, by trauma, by suffering, by years of dust and neglect, it retains its inherent clarity. The pieces may be scattered, but each piece still has the capacity to reflect. This is the Buddha nature, the inherent potential for awakening that exists in all beings. This is the final lesson of the mirror. Clarity is not something we gain, but something we remember, even when the mirror is broken. No matter what we have been through, no matter how clouded our minds may seem, the inherent clarity of awareness remains, waiting to be recognized. Let's return to our breath now, as we prepare for tonight's practice. 2 hours, 1 minute elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the air fill your lungs completely. Hold it for a moment, and exhale slowly, releasing any tension or effort. As you breathe, imagine yourself sitting beside Beizhang's mirror, watching as it reflects the sky and the bamboo, as dust settles and is gently wiped away. Notice your own mind as a mirror, reflecting whatever arises, sounds from the room, sensations in your body, thoughts and feelings. Notice that the mirror of your awareness is separate from what it reflects. It is the silent witness, unchanging even as the reflections change. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the mirror of awareness. Tonight's practice. As you drift towards sleep tonight, imagine your awareness as a clear, luminous mirror. Whatever arises, thoughts, feelings, sounds, sensations, is simply reflected in this mirror, without being held or pushed away. When you notice a thought or feeling arising, simply say to yourself silently, "Reflection," as a way of recognizing it as a temporary phenomenon, not who you are. If you notice that the mirror has become clouded by worry, by planning, by emotional reactivity, don't judge yourself. This is just dust settling, as it naturally does. Instead, gently return to the sensation of your breath, like wiping the mirror with a soft cloth dot. Remember that the mirror does not need to be perfect. Even when it is clouded, even when it seems broken, it retains its inherent capacity to reflect. Your awareness is like this, always present, always clear in its essence, no matter what is reflected in it. As you drift deeper into relaxation, let yourself rest in the knowing that you are not the reflections in the mirror, but the mirror itself, the clear, empty, luminous awareness that makes all experience possible. Before we move to the next story, carry with you the image of Beijing's mirror, reflecting the sky and bamboo with perfect clarity, yet untouched by what it reflects. Remember his final words to the young monk: "The mirror does not need to be fixed, because it was never broken. It only needs to be recognized in all its pieces as the clear, luminous thing it is." In the same way, your own inherent clarity is always present, waiting to be recognized, no matter what thoughts or feelings may arise. Take one last deep breath and let it carry you into this recognition, into the quiet clarity of the mirror that reflects without being changed. Let the image of Beijing's mirror remain with you as we move now to a humble kitchen in a mountain monastery. The cool smoothness of the bronze gives way to the warmth of earthen walls and the rough texture of wooden beams. The scent of sandalwood fades, replaced by the rich aroma of rice cooking and the earthy smell of wood smoke. The soft rustle of bamboo transforms into the crackle of a fire and the gentle clink of pottery bowls. In this kitchen, a young monk named Dioxin moves about, his tasks with the awkwardness of someone still learning. He stirs a pot of simmering vegetables, his movements hesitant, as if he's afraid of making a mistake. Nearby, an older monk tends to the fire, his movements economical and sure. This is Master Mazu Daoyi, known throughout this land for his direct, uncompromising teachings. Though he holds a position of honor in the monastery, he often spends his mornings in the kitchen, tending to the fire and preparing food. Daoxin watches Mazu as he carefully places a log on the fire, adjusting it so that the flame catches properly. There's a mindfulness in his actions, a quality of presence that Daoxin has noticed in all of Mazu's movements, whether he's chopping wood, sweeping the courtyard, or delivering a formal teaching. "Master," Daoxin says, breaking the comfortable silence, "I wish to understand the essence of Zen. I have studied the sutras. I practice meditation daily, but I feel I am missing something. What is the great secret of enlightenment?" Mazu doesn't look up from the fire. He adjusts a piece of wood, then blows gently on the embers until the flame grows stronger. "Do you see this fire?" he asks finally. Daoxin nods. "Yes, Master." "Do you see this wood?" Mazu says, gesturing to the stack beside the hearth. "Yes." "Do you smell the rice cooking?" "Yes, Master." "Then you are already in the presence of the essence of Zen," Mazu says. "There is no great secret, no hidden teaching. The path is right here, in chopping wood and carrying water, in tending the fire and cooking the rice." Dioxin looks confused. "But Master, these are just ordinary tasks. I thought enlightenment was something extraordinary, something to be achieved through great effort and meditation." Mazu looks at him then, his eyes sharp with kindness. "When you understand that there is no difference between ordinary and extraordinary, between the sacred and the secular, then you will have understood Zen. Firewood becomes fire. Fire cooks rice. Rice nourishes the body. This is the way things are. To see this clearly is to be enlightened. This is the first lesson of firewood and flame. The sacred is found in the ordinary, not separate from it. The great truths are not hidden in distant mountains or esoteric teachings, but in the simple, everyday activities of life. Chopping wood, carrying water, tending a fire. These are not distractions from the spiritual path, but the path itself. The Buddha taught this truth in the Majjhima Nikaya, where he said, "Just as a great river has a single taste, the taste of water, so this, Dharma and discipline, has a single taste, the taste of liberation." Majjhima Nikaya 137. This liberation is not found in transcending ordinary life, but in meeting it with awareness and understanding that in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. He elaborated on this, teaching that mindfulness should be practiced in all activities. When going forward and returning, he acts with clear comprehension. When looking ahead and looking aside, he acts with clear comprehension. When bending and extending his limbs, he acts with clear comprehension. Digha Nikaya 22. This is the practice of bringing awareness to every moment, no matter how ordinary. Modern psychology supports this understanding, showing that people who are able to find meaning in everyday activities have higher levels of well-being and life satisfaction. Research on flow states, those moments when we are completely absorbed in what we're doing, demonstrates that these states can occur in any activity, from cooking to gardening to washing dishes, when we approach them with full attention. Neuroscience shows that these moments of absorbed attention activate the brain's task-positive network, the same network involved in focused, present moment awareness, while quieting the default mode network associated with rumination and self-judgment. This helps explain why even simple tasks can be sources of peace and fulfillment when approached with mindfulness. Let's take a moment to experience this for ourselves. 2 hours 20 minutes elapsed. Bring your attention to the sensation of your body resting where you are. Notice the points of contact, the weight of your legs, the pressure of your back against the surface behind you, the feel of air on your skin. Now, bring to mind a simple, everyday activity, something you do regularly, like washing dishes, making tea, or brushing your teeth. It should be something so ordinary that you usually do it without much thought. Imagine doing this activity now, but with the mindfulness of Mazu tending the fire. Notice the sensations, the warmth of water, the texture of a brush, the sound of dishes clinking. Notice the movements of your hands and arms, the way your breath coordinates with your actions. Notice how this changes your relationship to the activity. It is no longer just a chore to be rushed through, but an opportunity to be fully present, to engage with life exactly as it is in this moment. This is the practice of finding the sacred in the ordinary. The oxen continues to stir the vegetables, but his movements are more tentative now as he tries to understand Mazu's words. "But Master," he says, "if enlightenment is found in these ordinary tasks, why do we bother with meditation? Why do we study the sutras?" Mazu adds another piece of wood to the fire, watching as the flame wraps around it. A thirsty person drinks water, he says. The drinking is not separate from the quenching of thirst. In the same way, meditation and study are not separate from the ordinary activities of life. They are ways of preparing us to meet those activities with awareness. He takes a ladle and dips it into the pot of rice, checking to see if it's done. When you meditate, you learn to be present. When you study, you learn to see clearly. But these practices are like sharpening a knife, useful only if you then use the knife to cut something. The purpose of Zen is not to sit in meditation forever, but to bring the clarity of meditation to every moment. Dioxin thinks about this as he ladles the vegetables into a bowl. So even when I'm angry or distracted, even when I'm not feeling particularly spiritual, this is still the path? Especially then, Mazu says, the fire does not reject the wood because it is damp or gnarled. It transforms whatever is put into it, turning it into flame and heat. In the same way, your practice is to meet whatever arise, anger, distraction, doubt as part of the path, not obstacles to it. This is the second lesson of firewood and flame. Spiritual practice is not about avoiding difficulty, but meeting it with awareness. The fire doesn't choose only dry, perfect wood. It works with whatever is available, transforming it into something useful. In the same way, our practice is not to wait for ideal conditions, but to bring mindfulness to whatever arises, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. The Buddha expressed this in the Dhammapada. You yourself must make an effort. The Tathagatas, enlightened ones, are only teachers. Those who practice the Dharma will cross over the flood of suffering. Those who do not practice will not cross over. Dhammapada 276. This effort is not about forcing things to be a certain way, but about showing up fully, completely to whatever is happening. Modern psychology research on resilience supports this understanding. Studies show that resilience is not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to respond to difficulty with flexibility and awareness. People who are resilient don't avoid challenges. They meet them with a sense of possibility, seeing them as opportunities for growth rather than threats. This is exactly what Mazu is describing, the ability to meet each moment, whether it's tending a perfect fire or struggling with a damp log, with the same quality of attention and presence as the morning progresses. Mazu and Daoxin prepare the meal together, their movements falling into a quiet rhythm. Mazu cuts vegetables with a precision that comes from years of practice, his knife moving in perfect harmony with his breath. Daoxin tries to imitate this, but finds his mind wandering, his movements becoming clumsy. Master, he says, frustration. In his voice, I can't seem to do this with the same mindfulness you have. My mind keeps wandering to other things. Mazu looks up, his knife pausing mid-air. When your mind wanders, what do? He asks. I try to force it back to the task, Daoxin admits. Mazu shakes his head, resuming his chopping. That is like trying to put out a fire by blowing on it harder. When you notice your mind has wandered, simply return it to the task, without judgment, without frustration. This is the practice. He holds up a perfectly cut piece of carrot. See this? It was. Not always perfect. When I first began, my cuts were uneven. My mind wandered constantly. But I kept returning again and again to the task at hand. This is how mastery comes not through perfection, but through persistence. This is the third lesson of firewood and flame. Mastery comes through repetition with awareness, not through perfection. Mazu's skill with the knife didn't appear overnight. It was developed through thousands of hours of chopping vegetables, each time returning to the task when his mind wandered. This is true of any skill, whether it's cooking, meditation, or simply living with awareness. The Buddha described this process in the Anguttara Nikaya, where he compared the practice to building a dam, one brick at a time, just as a great reservoir. For a town is built for the good of many, so too is this Dharma and discipline well proclaimed by me for the happiness of many, for the good of many, for the welfare of many, out of compassion for the world. Anguttara Nikaya 3.137. Like building a dam, the practice of mindfulness is built one moment at a time, each moment strengthening the capacity for awareness. Neuroscience confirms this, showing that repeated mindfulness practice strengthens the neural pathways associated with attention and emotional regulation. Each time we notice our mind wandering and gently return to the present moment, we're essentially exercising these neural networks, making them stronger and more efficient. As they finish preparing the meal, Mazu and Daoxin carry the bowls to the dining hall where the other monks have gathered. They sit in silence as they eat, a practice known as eating meditation, where each bite is experienced fully, without distraction. Daoxin notices things he's never paid attention to. Before the subtle sweetness of the rice, the way the texture changes as he chews, the warmth spreading through his body as he eats. For a moment, his mind is completely present, no longer chasing after thoughts of enlightenment or worrying about his practice. He simply eats, and in that simplicity, he feels a sense of peace he has never known before. After the meal, as the Monks return to their tasks. Dioxin approaches Mazu again. Master, when I was eating just now, I felt a kind of clarity, a sense of peace. Was that enlightened? Mazu smiles. That was eating, he says. Enlightenment is knowing that eating is eating, that chopping wood is chopping wood, that carrying water is carrying water. It is not something added to these activities, but seeing them as they are, without concepts, without expectations, without seeking anything beyond what is present. He picks up a broom and begins to sweep the kitchen floor, his movements as mindful as when he was tending the fire. Watch, he says. This sweeping is enlightenment. Each stroke of the broom is perfect, complete in itself. There is no past, no future, only this moment, this action. This is the fourth lesson of firewood and flame. Enlightenment is not a distant goal to be achieved, but the recognition of what is already present. It is not something we gain through effort, but something we realize by removing the conceptual filters that prevent us from seeing life as it is. In the simple act of sweeping, of eating, of breathing, we are already in the presence of everything we need. The Buddha taught this in the Lankavatara Sutra, where he said, "All things are Buddha things." There is no enlightenment apart from this very mind. This mind, the ordinary, everyday mind that experiences joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, is the same mind that is inherently enlightened once we stop looking for something else. As the day turns to evening, Dioxin helps Mazu prepare the fire for the night. He places the wood carefully, remembering Nazu's words, and is surprised to find that his movements are more confident, more mindful than they were that morning. Master, he says, as the fire crackles warmly, I think I'm beginning to understand. It's not about doing extraordinary things, but about doing ordinary things in an extraordinary way, with full presence. Mazu nods, his eyes reflecting the firelight. And when you understand that there is no ordinary or extraordinary, he says, only this moment, just as it is, then you will have understood everything. He adds one more piece of wood to the fire. The firewood becomes flame. The flame becomes ash. The ash returns to the earth, and the earth grows new trees. This is the way of all things. To see this cycle clearly, to participate in it fully, is to be free. This is the final lesson of firewood and flame. Freedom is found in participating fully in the natural cycle of life, without resistance or grasping. The fire doesn't hold onto the wood. The flame doesn't cling to its form. The ash doesn't resist returning to the earth. In the same way, we find freedom when we allow life to unfold as it will, meeting each moment with awareness and acceptance. Let's return to our breath now as we prepare for tonight's practice. 2 hours 37 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the air fill your lungs, bringing with it the warmth of Mazu's kitchen and the presence of firelight. Hold it for a moment and exhale slowly, releasing any tension or striving. As you breathe, imagine yourself in that kitchen, tending to the fire with Mazu. Feel the warmth of the flames, smell the wood smoke and cooking rice. Hear the gentle crackle of the fire. Notice how even in this imagined space, your mind may wander to thoughts of the past or future, to judgments or plans. When you notice this, simply return to the sensation of the breath, to the image of the fire, just as Dioxin learned to return to his tasks. This simple act of returning again and again is the whole of the practice. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the mindfulness of ordinary things. Tonight's practice. As you move through the remaining moments of your day, and as you drift towards sleep tonight, commit to noticing at least one ordinary activity with extraordinary awareness. It might be brushing your teeth, turning off the lights, or adjusting your pillow. When you engage in this activity, bring all your attention to it. Notice the sensations, the textures, sounds, smells, tastes. Notice the movements of your body, the way your breath coordinates with your actions. If your mind wanders, and it will simply notice that, without judgment, and gently return to the activity. This is not a test of your concentration, but a practice of returning, again and again, to the present moment. As you drift towards sleep, recall this moment of mindful activity. Let it remind you that enlightenment, peace, and presence are not distant goals, but qualities that are available in any moment, no matter how ordinary. Remember Mazu's words. When you understand that chopping wood is chopping wood and carrying water is carrying water, then you understand Zen. In other words, when you can meet each moment exactly as it is, without seeking anything beyond it, you have found the peace you've been looking for. Before we move to the next story, carry with you the image of Mazu's fire steadfast, transforming, present. Remember that like that fire, you have the capacity to meet whatever comes your way with warmth, presence, and transformation. Take one last deep breath and let it carry you into the recognition that this moment, just as it is perfect and complete, just like the flame that dances in the hearth, consuming wood and giving light without effort or striving. Let the warmth of Mazu's kitchen fire stay with you as we journey now to a place of open sky and stone. The smell of wood smoke fades, replaced by the crisp, clean scent of mountain air, thin, sharp, and alive with the mineral tang of rock. The soft sounds of a monastery kitchen give way to the whistle of wind through narrow passages and the distant call of a hawk circling high above. We find ourselves at the edge of a deep valley, its walls rising steeply on either side like the pages of an open book. The rocks are layered in shades of red and gold, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. At the bottom, a river glimmers like a silver thread, its sound too faint to hear from where we stand. This is Echo Valley, a place known throughout the region for the clarity of its echoes, a phenomenon that has taught wisdom to travelers for generations. Among those travelers, today is a young woman named Ling. She carries a small pack on her back, her boots dusted with the earth of many roads. Her face is set in a frown, her brow furrowed with frustration. She has come to this valley not by choice, but because she lost her way. What was supposed to be a simple journey to visit her grandmother has become a confusing, exhausting ordeal. First, she missed her train, then her map blew away in a storm, and finally, a local farmer gave her directions that led her here, to this desolate valley, instead of to the village where her grandmother lives. This is just perfect, she mutters to herself, kicking a small stone. It tumbles down the slope, bouncing off larger rocks until it disappears from sight. Everything always goes wrong. Nothing ever works out the way it's supposed to. She sits down on a flat rock, pulling her knees to her chest. As she rests, she notices something strange. The sound of her own voice seems to linger in the air, as if someone is repeating her words back to her, but fainter, distorted. "Hello?" she calls out, curious despite her frustration. "Hello?" comes the reply, echoing back from the valley walls. Ling is surprised. She's heard of echo valleys before, but never experienced one. Intrigued, she tries again. "Who's there?" "Who's there?" the valley responds. A small smile tugs at the corners of her mouth, despite her bad mood. "What's your name?" she calls. "What's your name?" comes the echo. This amuses her. For a moment, she forgets her frustration, caught up in this simple interaction. But then, as if remembering her anger, she shouts, "You're annoying. You're annoying." The valley shouts back. Ling frowns again. The echo, which seemed playful a moment ago, now sounds hostile. "Why are you being so mean?" she yells. "Why are you being so mean?" The valley replies. This makes her angrier. "I hate this place," she screams, standing up and stamping her foot. "I hate everything. I hate this place. I hate everything." The Valley screams back, the words bouncing off the rocks with a fury that matches her own. Ling sits back down, startled by the intensity of the response. She hadn't realized how much anger she was carrying until she heard it reflected back at her. For a moment, she simply sits in silence, listening as the final echoes fade away. This is the first lesson of Echo Valley. The world reflects back to us the energy we put into it. Like the valley, which does not create sound, but reflects it. The people and circumstances around us often mirror the attitudes and emotions we bring to them. Anger meets anger, kindness meets kindness, frustration meets frustration. The Buddha taught this truth in the Dhammapada, where he said, "Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness will follow you, like a shadow that never leaves." Dhammapada 1. This is not a promise that life will always be easy, but that our experience of life is deeply influenced by the quality of our own minds. In the Anguttara Nikaya, he elaborated on this, describing how our thoughts shape our world. If a person's mind is unwholesome, their body and speech will be unwholesome, and suffering will follow them, like a wheel follows the foot of the ox. Anguttara Nikaya 3.55. This is the same principle at work in the Echo Valley. Our inner state is reflected in our outer experience. Modern psychology calls this phenomenon projection, the tendency to see in others the qualities, thoughts, and feelings that exist within ourselves. Research in social psychology has shown that we often perceive others' behavior through the filter of our own emotional states. For example, studies have demonstrated that people who are angry are more likely to perceive anger in neutral faces, while people who are happy are more likely to perceive happiness. Neuroscience helps explain this at the brain level. The mirror, neuron system cells in the brain that activate both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing it, plays a key role in this process. These neurons help us understand and empathize with others, but they also mean that our own emotional states influence how we perceive the emotions of those around us. In other words, our brains are wired to create echoes of our inner world in our perception of the outer world. Let's take a moment to notice this in our own experience. 2 hours 55 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the cool mountain air fill your lungs. Hold it for a moment, and exhale slowly, releasing any tension in your body. As you breathe, bring to mind a recent interaction with someone else, perhaps a conversation, a brief encounter, or even an argument. Notice how you felt during that interaction. Were you calm or frustrated, open or defensive? Now, notice how you perceive the other person's behavior. Did they seem kind or hostile, cooperative or difficult? Is it possible that your perception of them was influenced by your own emotional state? Like Ling in the Echo Valley, could it be that some of what you experienced was a reflection of your own inner world? There's no need to judge this, just to notice it with the same curiosity Ling felt when she first heard her voice echoed back. This simple act of awareness is the first step toward choosing what we want to project into the world. As Ling sits in silence, a figure appears on the path above her, a hermit, his clothes made from rough cloth, his hair and beard long and wild, but his eyes clear and calm. He carries a small bundle of herbs, which he is drying in the sun. He watches Ling for a moment, then calls down to her. "Lost, are you?" Ling looks up, embarrassed. "Yes," she says. "I'm trying to get to Green Village, but I must have taken a wrong turn." The hermit nods. This valley has a way of finding those who need to be found, not just those who are lost geographically. He climbs down the slope with surprising agility, sitting down on a rock across from her. "I heard your shouts." The valley can be a harsh teacher, can't it? Ling looks away, uncomfortable. It kept repeating everything I said. It was annoying. The hermit smiles. Annoying or helpful? What if the valley is not mocking you, but showing you something? He points to the cliffs. The rocks do not judge what they reflect. They simply send back what is given to them. If you shout in anger, anger comes back. If you speak in kindness, kindness returns. He pauses, looking into Ling's eyes. Is it possible that the rest of the world works this way too? That people and circumstances reflect back to us the energy we give them? Ling thinks about this. She thinks about her missed train, how she'd been rushing, angry about being late even before she missed it. She thinks about her map blowing away, how she'd been cursing the weather instead of accepting it. She thinks about the farmer who gave her the wrong directions, how she'd been short with him, impatient to be on her way. Maybe I did bring some of this on myself, she admits, surprised by the thought. The hermit nods. Not in a way that blames you, he says, but in a way that empowers you. If the world reflects back what we give it, then we have the power to change our experience by changing what we project. He stands up, gesturing for Ling to join him. Try something, he says. Speak to the valley with kindness and see what happens. Ling hesitates, then takes a deep breath. Thank you, she calls out to the valley. This is a beautiful place. Thank you. This is a beautiful place. The valley echoes back, the words sounding softer, more harmonious than before. Smiles genuinely this time. That's better, she says. Better, the valley agrees. This is the second lesson of Echo Valley. We have the power to change the reflections we receive by changing what we project. The valley doesn't care whether it echoes anger or kindness. It simply reflects what is given. In the same way, much of what we experience in the world is a neutral reflection of our own thoughts, feelings, and actions. By changing these, we can change our experience. The Buddha taught this as the principle of karma, not as a system of reward and punishment, but as the natural law of cause and effect. In the Majjhima Nikaya, he said, just as a farmer plants a seed and reaps a harvest, so too do our actions plant seeds that ripen into our experience. Majjhima Nikaya 135. This is not about blame, but about responsibility, the recognition that we are active participants in creating our own reality. Modern psychology supports this understanding through research on the self-fulfilling prophecy, the phenomenon where our expectations influence our behavior, which in turn influences the behavior of others, ultimately confirming our initial expectations. For example, studies have shown that teachers who expect students to succeed are more likely to create conditions that help them succeed, while those who expect failure often inadvertently create conditions that lead to failure. This is the echo. Effect in action. Our expectations and attitudes create a reality that reflects them back to us. The good news is that this means we can intentionally cultivate positive expectations and attitudes, creating a positive feedback loop in our relationships. And experiences. As Ling and the hermit walk along the edge of the valley, the hermit tells her about the history of the place. For centuries, people have come here to learn from the echoes, he says. Monks, scholars, ordinary travelers all, seeking to understand the relationship between their inner world and their outer experience. He points to carvings on a nearby, rock-faded symbols that have been worn by time. These were made by a monk who lived here over 200 years ago. He spent 40 years studying the echoes until he realized that the valley was not just reflecting his words, but his thoughts and feelings as well. Ling looks at the carvings, trying to make sense of them. How can a valley reflect thoughts? She asks. It can only hear sounds. Ah, the hermit says, but our thoughts create our words and actions, which then create our experience. The valley reflects the outer expression, but the outer expression begins with the inner state. He stops walking, turning to face her. Try this. Think angry thoughts, then speak kindly to the valley. See what happens. Ling closes her eyes, thinking about all the frustrations of her journey. The missed train, the lost map, the wrong directions. She feels the anger rising in her chest, hot and tight. Then she opens her mouth and says, "You are beautiful." To the valley, the echo comes back, but it sounds hollow, forced, not like the genuine kindness she felt earlier. "Do you hear the difference?" the hermit asks. "Your words were kind, but your thoughts were angry," and the valley reflected that inauthenticity. It is not enough to speak kind words. We must cultivate kind thoughts and feelings so that our words and actions are authentic expressions of our inner state. This is the third lesson of Echo Valley. Authenticity matters. The valley reflects not just our words, but the energy behind them. Inauthentic kindness, kind words, spoken with anger or resentment behind them, is still experienced as anger or resentment by those around us. No matter how pleasant the words may be, the Buddha taught this as the importance of samavakkarite, speech, which is one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech is not just about saying the right things, but about speaking from a place of kindness, honesty, and compassion. In the Samyutta Nikaya, he said, "A person of wise speech speaks truthfully, gently, constructively, and timely." This is called right speech. Samyutta Nikaya 45.8, Modern Psychology Research on Emotional Contagion, supports this understanding. Studies have shown that emotions are contagious. We can catch the emotions of those around us, even when they are not explicitly expressed. This is because we pick up on subtle cues, facial expressions, body language, tone of voice that convey emotional states, often without conscious awareness. This means that our inner emotional state influences those around us, even if we try to hide it. Like the Echo Valley, which reflects the true energy behind our words, the people in our lives often respond to the emotional undercurrents of our communication, not just the surface content dot as the sun begins to dip toward the western mountains. Painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the hermit leads Ling to a small path that branches off from the valley edge. "This will take you to Green Village," he says. It's a shorter path than the one you were on, though a bit steep in places. Ling thanks him, then hesitates. "Before I go," she says, "there's something I don't understand. If the world reflects back what we give it, then why do bad things happen to good people? Why do kind people sometimes experience suffering?" The hermit looks out over the valley, now bathed in the warm light of sunset. "The echo is not the only force at work in the valley," he says. "There is also the wind, which can distort the sound. There are the rocks, which have their own shape and character. There are the other travelers, whose voices may mix with yours." He turns to her. "In the same way, our lives are influenced by many forces beyond our own thoughts and actions. The actions of others, by circumstances, by the natural world. The echo is real, but it is not the only reality." He picks up a stone and tosses it into the valley. They watch it fall, listening as it hits the rocks below. The valley reflects our voices, but it also has its own nature, its own laws. A stone thrown into the valley will fall, no matter how kind our words. This is the nature of things Dharma. This is the fourth lesson of Echo Valley. The echo is real, but it is not the only force at work in our lives. While our thoughts, feelings, and actions do shape our experience, they are not the only factors. There is also the Dharma, the way things are, the natural laws that govern the universe, the actions of others, and the simple unpredictability of life. The Buddha acknowledged this in his teaching of Paticcasamuppada-dependent origination, the understanding that all phenomena arise from multiple causes and conditions, not just one. This means that while our actions are important, they are part of a complex web of causes and effects that includes many factors beyond our control. This understanding helps us avoid two extremes: the belief that we are completely responsible for everything that happens to us, which can lead to guilt and shame, and the belief that we are completely powerless, which can lead to hopelessness and despair. Instead, we can recognize our agency in creating our experience, while also accepting the many factors that are beyond our control. As Ling begins her journey down the path to Green Village, she turns to wave to the hermit. "Thank you," she calls out. "I'll remember what the valley taught me." The hermit waves back. "Remember that you carry the valley within you," he says. "Every interaction is an echo. Choose what you want to hear reflected back." Ling walks on, but she finds herself pausing every now and then, listening to the sounds of the forest around her. When a bird sings, she sings back, smiling as she hears the faint echo. When she feels frustration rising at the steepness of the path, she takes a deep breath and says, "This is challenging, but I can do it," and feels the tension ease as the words seem to echo back to her from within. She realizes that the hermit was right. We don't need a special valley to experience the echo effect. Every moment, in every interaction, we are creating echoes with our thoughts, words, and actions. The question is not whether we will create echoes, but what kind of echoes we will create. Let's return to our breath now as we prepare for tonight's practice. 3 hours, 12 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the mountain air fill your lungs, carrying with it the wisdom of the Echo Valley. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any remaining tension. As you breathe, imagine yourself standing at the edge of that valley, looking out at the vast expanse of rock and sky. Feel the wind on your face. Hear the sound of your own breath. Notice the thoughts and feelings that arise in your mind. Remember that these thoughts and feelings are like voices in the valley. They will create echoes in your experience of the world. You don't have to force them to be positive, but you can choose to notice them and to respond to them with awareness. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the Echo of Awareness. Tonight's practice, as you drift towards sleep tonight, bring to mind a relationship or situation in your life that is challenging. It might be a difficult person, a frustrating circumstance, or an ongoing struggle. Imagine this relationship or situation as the Echo Valley. What energy are you bringing to it? What? Let the quiet wisdom of Echo Valley stay with you as we journey now to a place of still water and soft light. The crisp mountain air fades, replaced by the humid, sweet scent of water lily and damp earth. The sound of wind through rocks gives way to the gentle lapping of water against stone and the distant croak of a frog. We find ourselves at the edge of a small pond, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the pale blue of the sky above. Around the pond, lush green plants grow in abundance: ferns with delicate fronds, broad-leafed water plants, and tall grasses that sway gently in the breeze. But our attention is drawn to the center of the pond, where a single lotus flower stands tall on a slender stem. Unlike the vibrant pink and white lotus flowers that dot the edges of the pond, this one is still closed, a tight green bud, its potential hidden beneath layers of protective leaves. It has been this way for days, seemingly unchanged, while the other lotus flowers have opened and closed, following the rhythm of the sun and moon. Beside the pond sits an old woman named May, her hands resting gently on her knees. She comes to this spot every morning, carrying a small wooden stool and a thermos of tea. She has tended this pond for over 20 years, since her husband died and left it to her. She knows every plant, every fish, every change in the water's surface. But this particular lotus bud has captured her attention. It appeared later than the others, smaller and slower to develop. While the other buds swelled and opened in the warm summer sun, this one remained stubbornly closed, as if hesitant to reveal its beauty. "Come on, little one," May says softly, as she does every morning. "What are you waiting for?" She leans forward, as if trying to will the bud to open with her gaze. "The others are already in full bloom. You're falling behind." As she sits there, her impatience grows. She thinks about all the things she could do to help it along. Maybe add more fertilizer to the water, or move it to a sunnier spot, or even gently pry the petals open with her fingers. Her mind races with strategies, with ways to speed up the process, to make the flower conform to her timeline. This is a familiar feeling for May. She has always been this way impatient, goal-oriented, always wanting things to happen when she wants them to happen. It served her well in many ways. She built a successful business, raised 2 children on her own, navigated the challenges of life with determination and grit. But it has also brought her suffering. This inability to wait, this need to control. The timing of things as if sensing her frustration. A dragonfly lands on the lotus bud, its iridescent wings catching the sunlight. May watches as it crawls across the smooth green surface, pausing to clean its wings. For a moment, her impatience fades, replaced by curiosity. "Maybe you know something I don't," she says to the dragonfly. This is the first lesson of the unopened. Lotus. Growth has its own timing, independent of our desires or expectations. The lotus bud does not open because we want it to or because we think it should. It opens when the conditions are right, when the temperature is perfect, when the light is sufficient, when it has drawn enough nutrients from the water and soil. No amount of willpower or impatience can speed up this process. The Buddha taught this truth in the Udana, where he used the lotus as a metaphor for spiritual growth. Just as a lotus flower grows out of the mud and rises above the water to bloom. In the sun, so too can we rise above our suffering to reach enlightenment. Udana 6.4. This growth, like the lotuses, cannot be rushed. It unfolds in its own time, according to its own nature. In the Samyutta Nikaya, he elaborated on this, describing the path of practice as a gradual one, just as a great river gradually slopes, gradually inclines, gradually descends, not suddenly. So too is this Dharma and discipline gradually learned, gradually practiced, gradually realized, not suddenly. Samyutta Nikaya 56.31. This is a direct challenge to our modern desire for instant results, reminding us that meaningful growth takes time. Modern psychology helps us understand why this impatience causes so much suffering. Research has shown that humans have a strong preference for immediate rewards over delayed ones, a phenomenon known as temporal discounting. This preference made sense in our evolutionary past, when resources were scarce and the future was uncertain. But in modern life, it often leads us to make poor decisions and to feel frustrated when things don't happen quickly enough. Neuroscience research has identified the brain, regions involved in this process, including the prefrontal cortex, which helps us delay gratification, and the limbic system, which responds to immediate rewards. When we're impatient, the limbic system is dominant, driving us to seek immediate satisfaction. This is why waiting for the lotus to open can feel so difficult. It activates the same neural pathways as waiting for food, when we're hungry, or water when we're thirsty. But research has also shown that we can strengthen the prefrontal cortex. Through practice, learning to tolerate delay and appreciate the process rather than just the outcome. This is exactly what May is beginning to learn by sitting with the unopened lotus. Let's take a moment to feel this truth in our bodies. 3 hours 30 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, smelling the sweet scent of the pond, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin. Hold it for a moment and exhale slowly, releasing any tension in your body. As you breathe, bring to mind something in your life that you're waiting for, something you want to happen, or change, or grow. It might be a personal goal, a relationship, a skill you're trying to develop, or even just a better mood. Notice how this waiting feels in your body. Is there a tightness in your chest? A sense of restlessness, impatience, or even frustration? Now, imagine this thing you're waiting for as the unopened lotus bud. It has its own timing, its own process of development. It is not behind schedule or falling behind others. It is simply unfolding according to its own nature. With your next exhale, imagine softening your resistance to the waiting. You don't have to like it, but you can allow it to be as it is without struggling against it. Notice how this feels. There might be a sense of relief, even if it's small, in releasing the need to control the timing. This is the practice of aligning ourselves with the natural rhythm of growth, rather than fighting against it. As the morning progresses, May sits quietly by the pond, sipping her tea. She watches as the sun climbs higher in the sky, casting dappled light through the leaves of the trees onto the water's surface. She notices how the other lotus flowers, which were fully open when she arrived, are already beginning to close slightly, conserving their energy for the heat of the midday sun. They have their rhythm too, she thinks to herself, opening and closing, not trying to stay in bloom forever. She looks back at the unopened bud. It still hasn't changed, but somehow it seems different to her now, not as a disappointment or a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be respected. Why are you waiting? She asks again, but this time her voice is gentle, curious, not impatient. What do you need that you're not getting? As if in response, a gentle breeze ripples across the pond, causing the lotus stem to sway. A drop of water falls from one of its leaves into the pond, creating a small circle of ripples that expands outward, touching the edges of the pond, and then fading away. May thinks about her own life, about the time she rushed things her first marriage, which ended in divorce after she pressured her husband to marry before he was ready. Her business, which nearly failed because she expanded too quickly. Her relationship with her children, which was strained because she wanted them to grow up faster, to be more responsible, to be something other than who they were. I've never been very good at waiting, she admits to the lotus. But maybe that's my lesson, not yours. This is the second lesson of the unopened lotus. Waiting is not passive. It is an active practice of trust and presence. May is not doing nothing as she sits by the pond. She is practicing patience, curiosity, and acceptance. She is learning to trust that the lotus knows when to open, even if she doesn't. The Buddha described this kind of trust as saddha faith, or confidence in the natural order of things. In the Vataka, he said, when a monk has faith, he undertakes the training, he practices the precepts, he develops concentration, he gains wisdom. Vataka 2.1. This faith is not blind belief, but trust based on experience, the experience that growth happens in its own time, when the conditions are right. Modern psychology research on mindfulness supports this understanding, showing that practicing present moment awareness can reduce the suffering associated with waiting. When we focus on the present moment, rather than fixating on the future outcome, we reduce the activation of the brain's reward centers, which are responsible for the frustration of delayed gratification. This doesn't mean we stop working toward our goals, any more than May stops caring for the pond because she's waiting for the lotus to open. It means we learn to engage with the process fully without being consumed by the need for a particular outcome at a particular time. As the days pass, May continues to visit the pond every morning, but her attitude has changed. She no longer urges the lotus to open or frets about its slowness. Instead, she brings her full attention to the present moment, the way the light catches the water, the sound of birds in the trees, the subtle changes in the bud that she hadn't noticed before. She sees that it is growing, albeit slowly. Each day, it swells just a little, its green color deepening, its shape becoming more defined. She realizes that growth is often imperceptible in the moment, noticeable only when we look back over time. One morning, as she sits by the pond drinking her tea, May notices something different. The tip of the lotus bud has turned a delicate shade of pink, a hint of the color that lies beneath. She leans forward, not with impatience, but with the quiet excitement of a discovery. "It's starting," she says softly. Over the next few days, she watches as the transformation continues. The pink spreads, the bud swells, and finally, on a warm morning when the sun is bright and the air is still, the lotus begins to open out. It happens slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. A small crack appears at the top, then widens as the petals begin to unfurl one by one. They curl outward, revealing their soft pink color, their edges delicate as tissue paper. By midday, the flower is fully open, its center a golden cluster of stamens. Radiant in the sunlight, Datmai sits in silence, tears in her eyes. She has seen many lotus flowers open over the years, but none has moved her as much as this one. Perhaps because she has waited for it, or because she has learned to see it differently, not as a goal to be achieved, but as a process to be witnessed. It was worth the wait, she says, but she's not sure if she's speaking to the lotus or to herself. This is the third lesson of the unopened lotus. The joy of the outcome is deepened by the patience of the process. May's appreciation of the fully open lotus is heightened because she waited for it, because she learned to see its beauty even before it bloomed. In the same way, the achievements and joys of life are often more meaningful when they are not rushed, when we have engaged fully with the journey. The Buddha taught this in the Dhammapada, where he said, "Just as a tree, though cut down, can grow again if its roots are intact, so too can goodness grow again in a person who has not cut off the roots of virtue." Dhammapada 143. This growth, like the lotuses, is not always rapid or dramatic, but it's slow. Steady development makes it strong and resilient. Modern psychology research on effort justification supports this understanding, showing that we value things more when we have invested effort or waited for them. This is why May values the lotus that took longer to open. Her patience and attention have deepened her appreciation of its beauty. As the days pass, May continues to watch the lotus, now fully open and radiant. She notices that it follows the same rhythm as the others, opening in the morning sun, closing at night, conserving its energy for the hours when pollinators are active. She thinks about how this mirrors the rhythms of her own life, the times of activity and rest, growth and consolidation, opening and closing. She realizes that there is wisdom in these rhythms, in knowing when to push forward and when to wait, when to open and when to close. One evening, as the sun sets and the lotus begins to close for the night, May reflects on what she has learned. "I used to think that waiting was a waste of time," she says, "but now I see that it's part of the process. Sometimes the most important growth happens when nothing seems to be happening at all." This is the fourth lesson of the unopened lotus. There is value in the in-between states, the times of waiting, of not knowing, of not yet blooming. These states are not empty or wasted. They are part of the natural cycle of growth, a period of gathering strength, of preparing, of becoming. The Buddha expressed this in his teaching of the middle way, the path that avoids the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-mortification. This path recognizes that growth often happens in the middle spaces, between action and inaction, between striving and surrender. Neuroscience research on brain development supports this understanding, showing that the brain continues to develop and change throughout life, often in ways that are not immediately apparent. Neural connections are strengthened, new pathways are formed, and existing ones are pruned, all processes that happen beneath the surface, invisible to the naked eye, but essential for growth and learning. As the summer turns to fall, the lotus flower begins to fade. Its petals droop, its color fades, and eventually it closes completely, returning to a bud-like shape as it prepares to release its seeds into the water. May knows that this is not an ending, but part of the cycle. The seeds will sink to the bottom of the pond, where they will lie dormant through the winter, waiting for the warmth of spring to germinate and begin the process anew. They will have their own timing too, she thinks, smiling. Some will grow quickly, some slowly. Some will bloom early, some late, but each will follow its own path in its own time. She packs up her stool and thermos, knowing she will return tomorrow, and the next day, and as long as she is able. The pond has become her teacher, the lotus her guide, showing her again and again the wisdom of patience, presence, and trust in the natural rhythm of life. Let's return to our breath now as we prepare for tonight's practice. 3 hours, 47 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the warm air of the pond, smelling the sweet scent of the lotus flower. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any remaining impatience or desire for things to be different. As you breathe, imagine yourself sitting beside May at the pond, watching the lotus flower in all its stages closed, opening, fully bloomed, and fading. See each stage as perfect in its own way, part of a larger cycle that has no beginning or end. Bring to mind something in your life that is in a closed state, something that is developing, growing, waiting to bloom. See it with the same eyes. May used to see the lotus not as a problem, but as a mystery, a process unfolding in its own time. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the patience of the lotus. Tonight's practice, as you drift towards sleep tonight, bring to mind something you're waiting for, something you want to grow, change, or come to fruition. It might be a personal goal, a relationship, a project, or a feeling. Imagine this thing as the unopened lotus bud. See it in your mind's eye closed, but full of potential, growing in its own time, according to its own nature. Notice any impatience or frustration that arises, and acknowledge it without judgment. This is just your mind's natural preference. For immediate results, like May's initial urge to rush the lotus. Now, imagine softening around this impatience as May learned to soften. Picture yourself sitting with the unopened bud, not trying to change it or rush it, but simply witnessing it with curiosity and acceptance. As you breathe, repeat silently to yourself, this is unfolding in its own time. I can trust the process. I can be present with what is. If your mind wanders to worries about the future or frustrations about the present, gently return to the image of the lotus bud and to the sensation of your breath. Remember that just as the lotus does not need your impatience to open, so too the things you're waiting for do not need your anxiety to grow. Your job is simply to tend to the conditions with your effort, your care, your presence, and trust that the rest will happen in its own time. Before we move to the next story, carry with you the image of May sitting by the pond, watching the fully open lotus in the morning sun, her heart full of gratitude for the lesson of patience. Remember that growth is not always dramatic or rapid, but slow, steady, and beautiful in its own time. Take one last deep breath and let it carry you into the quiet trust that all things are unfolding as they should, in their own time, in their own way, including you. Let the quiet patience of the lotus pond stay with you as we journey now to a place of simple tools and unexpected wisdom. The humid scent of water lily fades, replaced by the dry, earthy aroma of bamboo and the clean smell of mountain spring. Water. The gentle lapping of water gives way to the rustle of leaves and the rhythmic sound of footsteps on a dirt path. We find ourselves in a small mountain temple, its wooden buildings nestled among tall pine trees. In the courtyard, 2 young monks are preparing for their morning chore, carrying water from the spring at the bottom of the hill to the temple's storage cistern. The first monk, Hui, is new to the temple, still learning the ways of monastic life. He approaches the task with earnest determination, selecting the largest, sturdiest bucket from the shed. His face is set in a serious expression as he marches down the hill, the bucket swinging gently in his hands. The second monk, Z, has been at the temple for several years. He moves more slowly, with the relaxed confidence of someone who has performed this task hundreds of times. Instead of a bucket, he carries a simple bamboo basket, its weave loose enough to see through, clearly unsuitable for carrying water. Hui notices this as they walk, his brow furrowed with confusion. "See, what are you doing?" he asks. "That basket will never hold water. You'll be making twice as many trips as me." "Why not use a bucket?" Z smiles, adjusting the basket on his shoulder. The master says there is wisdom in using the basket. He says, "Come and see." Hui shakes his head, dismissing the idea as foolish. He continues down the path, his steps quickening as he looks forward to proving his efficiency. At the spring, Hui fills his bucket to the brim, careful not to spill a drop. He lifts it onto his shoulder with a grunt, then begins the steep climb. Back to the temple, his eyes focused on the path ahead, his body tense with the effort of keeping the bucket balanced. Z follows more slowly. He dips his bamboo basket into the spring, watching as the water rushes in through the gaps, then just as quickly flows out again. When he lifts it, only a few drops remain, clinging to the bamboo strips before falling to the ground. He starts. Back up the hill, the empty basket feeling light on his shoulder. Along the way, he pauses to notice a wildflower growing beside the path, its purple petals glowing in the morning sun. He listens to the birds singing in the trees, their songs weaving together in a complex melody. He feels the cool mountain air on his skin and the warmth of the sun on his back. When he reaches the temple, Hui is already there, emptying his bucket into the cistern with a sense of accomplishment. "See?" he says to Z. "I've already carried more water than you ever will with that basket." Z nods, setting his basket down. "You have carried more water," he says. "But what else have you carried?" Hui is confused. "What do you mean?" "I carried water, that's the task, isn't it?" Z smiles. "It is one task," he says. "But the path is long, and there is much to experience along the way. Did you notice the wildflowers? The birds? The way the light changes as we climb?" Hui thinks. Back, he remembers only the weight of the bucket, the strain in his shoulders, his fear of spilling water. "No," he admits. "I was focused on the task." "And so you missed the journey," Z says gently. Sometimes the master gives us tasks that seem impossible, not to test our strength, but to teach us to see beyond the obvious goal. This is the first lesson of the bamboo basket. There is wisdom in embracing inefficiency and opening ourselves to the fullness of experience. The bamboo basket cannot hold water in any practical sense, just as some of life's most valuable experiences cannot be measured by efficiency or productivity. When we focus only on the goal, the water in the cistern, we miss the beauty and wisdom of the path. The Buddha taught this in the Ajivakagata Sutta, where he refused to answer certain metaphysical questions, comparing them to a man who, having been shot by a poisoned arrow, refuses treatment until he knows who shot it, what kind of arrow it is, and where the wood came from. Majjhima Nikaya 44. The man would die before getting his answers. Just as we miss life if we focus only on abstract goals and ignore the present moment. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Just as a fish taken from its watery home and thrown on dry land thrills and throbs, so does the mind throng when it clings to things." Dhammapada 339. This clinging to goals, to outcomes, to efficiency, is what causes us to thresh about, missing the peace and beauty of the present moment. Modern psychology research supports this understanding, showing that people who are overly focused on goals and achievements, what psychologists call extrinsic motivation, often report lower levels of happiness and life satisfaction than those who are motivated by the inherent enjoyment of activities. Intrinsic motivation. Neuroscience research helps explain why. When we're focused on external goals, the brain's reward system is activated, releasing dopamine when we make progress toward those goals. But this system is designed to keep us striving, never fully satisfied. In contrast, when we're engaged in activities for their own sake, we activate the brain's default mode network and task-positive network in a balanced way, leading to a sense of flow and fulfillment. Let's take a moment to experience this for ourselves. 4 hours, 5 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, smelling the scent of bamboo and mountain air. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any tension. In your body. As you breathe, bring to mind a task you perform regularly, something you do for a specific goal or outcome. It might be your work, a household chore, or a workout. Notice how you typically approach this task. Do you focus only on getting it done, rushing through to the end? Or do you allow yourself to experience the process, the sensations, the thoughts, the small moments of beauty or insight that might arise? Now, imagine approaching this task like Z with his bamboo basket, with the knowledge that the goal is not the only purpose. Even if you fail to achieve the goal perfectly, there is value in the experience itself. With your next exhale, imagine softening your focus on the outcome and expanding your awareness to include the process. Notice how this feels, whether it brings a sense of relief or perhaps a little anxiety at first. This is the practice of opening ourselves to the fullness of experience, beyond just the water in the cistern. Over the next few days, Hui watches as Z continues to carry water with his bamboo basket. Each morning, he makes the journey to the spring and back, returning with nothing but a few drops clinging to the bamboo. Each evening, he helps Hui empty his buckets into the cistern, his expression as peaceful as if he had carried just as much water. Hui is perplexed. "Why do you keep doing it?" he asks one evening. "You're not accomplishing anything." The master must see that the basket is useless. Z shakes his head. "The master sees more than you think," he says. "Come with me tomorrow and carry the basket yourself. Then you will understand." Hui is skeptical, but his curiosity is piqued. The next morning, he agrees to try carrying the bamboo basket. Wow. Z uses the bucket. To Hui's surprise, the journey feels completely different with the basket. Without the weight of the water, he notices how light his steps are, how easily he can move. He finds himself looking around, noticing things he has never seen before. The way the morning light filters through the pine needles, creating patterns on the ground. The intricate design of a spider's web, glistening with dew. The sound of Avi, his own breath, steady and calm. At the spring, he dips the basket in, watching the water flow through. He feels a strange sense of freedom in this failure, a release from the pressure to succeed, to accomplish, to prove himself. On the way back, he notices that the basket, which seemed empty, is actually carrying something. Small stones and bits of moss that fell into it at the spring. He hadn't intended to collect them, but there they are, an unexpected gift from the path. When they return to the temple, Hui sets the basket down, feeling a sense of peace he hasn't experienced since. Arriving at the temple, "I see now," he says to Z. "The basket isn't for carrying water, it's for carrying awareness." Z smiles. The master says that sometimes we need to let go of our attachment to usefulness to discover what is truly valuable, he says. The bucket carries water, but the basket carries something more. It carries us fully present into each moment. This is the second lesson of the bamboo basket. Letting go of attachment to usefulness and success frees us to experience life more fully. Hui had been so focused on the useful task of carrying water that he missed the other kinds of wealth the path had to offer. Only when he let go of this attachment, by using a basket that couldn't possibly succeed at the task, was he able to open himself to a richer, more present experience. The Buddha taught this as the practice of non-attachment, Anupadana. 1. of the three marks of existence, along with impermanence and non-self. In the Samyutta Nikaya, he said, when a noble disciple sees thus, they become disenchanted with form, disenchanted with feeling, disenchanted with perception, disenchanted with formations, disenchanted with consciousness. Samyutta Nikaya 22.59. This disenchantment is not a rejection of life, but a release from the suffering caused by clinging to things that are impermanent and unsatisfying. Modern psychology research on mindfulness supports this understanding, showing that letting go of attachment to outcomes and focusing on the present moment reduces stress, increases happiness, and improves overall well-being. When we stop judging our experiences as successful or unsuccessful, useful or useless, we open ourselves to a more flexible, accepting relationship with life. One morning, the master himself joins the monks in the courtyard as they prepare to carry water. He looks at Hui, who is now using the bamboo basket, and at Z, who is using the bucket. Which of you has learned the lesson of the bamboo basket? He asks. Both monks look down, unsure. Finally, Hui speaks. I think the lesson is that there is value in the journey, not just the destination, he says. That sometimes what seems useless can teach us more than what seems useful. The master nods. This is true, he says, but there is more. Z, what have you learned from using the bucket these past few days? Z thinks for a moment. I have learned that there is also value in usefulness, master, he says. The cistern must be filled, and the bucket does this well. I have learned not to disdain the practical for the spiritual, but to see them as two sides of the same coin. The master smiles. Well said, he says. The path is not in the bucket or the basket alone, but in knowing when to use each. Sometimes we need to carry water, and sometimes we need to carry awareness. The wisdom is in discerning which is needed in each moment. This is the third lesson of the bamboo basket. Wisdom lies in discernment, not extremism. The bamboo basket is not better than the bucket, nor is the bucket better than the basket. Each has its place, its purpose. The problem arises only when we become attached to one way of being, one way of seeing, to the exclusion of all others. The Buddha taught this as the middle way, the path that avoids the extremes of asceticism and indulgence, but also the extremes of rigidly clinging to either spiritual or material concerns. In the Dhammacappa Bhavavan Sutta, his first teaching after enlightenment, he said, there are two extremes that should not be followed by one who has gone forth. What are the two? The pursuit of sensual happiness and sensual pleasures, which is low, common, the way of ordinary people, unworthy and unprofitable, and the pursuit of self-mortification, which is painful, unworthy, and unprofitable. Samyutta Nikaya 56.11. Modern psychology calls this cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between different ways of thinking and being, depending on the situation. Research shows that cognitive flexibility is associated with better mental health, greater creativity, and more effective problem solving. Like the monks learning when to use the bucket and when to use the basket, cognitively flexible people can adapt their approach to fit the needs of each moment. As the weeks pass, Hui and Z develop a rhythm of working together, some days using the buckets to fill the cistern, other days using the baskets to remind themselves to stay present. They find that when they approach the task with this flexibility, neither the work nor the awareness feels like a burden. One afternoon, a heavy rainstorm hits the mountain, filling the cistern to overflowing. The monks gather in the temple, watching. As the water pours out of the cistern and into the garden, Hui turns to the master. All our carrying was unnecessary, he says. The rain has done the work for us. The master smiles. Was it unnecessary? He asks, did you not learn? Even if the water was eventually replaced by rain? Did you not grow? even if the task was completed by nature rather than by you. Hui thinks about this. He thinks about the strength he has gained from carrying the buckets, the peace he has found in carrying the basket, the friendship he has developed with Z through their shared task. No, he says finally, it was not unnecessary. The water was never the only purpose. This is the fourth lesson of the bamboo basket. The value of our efforts is not determined by their practical outcome. Even if the cistern had never needed filling, even if the rain had come from the first day, Hui and Z would have gained something valuable from their daily journey to the spring. The effort itself, with its opportunities for growth, connection, and awareness, is its own reward. The Buddha expressed this in the Vataka, where he said, just as a person might carry a bowl of oil walking through a crowd, and if they spill even a drop, their head will be cut off, so too must a monk guard his senses, not allowing even a little unwholesome state to arise. Vataka 3.3. The value of the practice is not in some distant reward, but in the way it shapes us in each moment. Modern psychology research on process versus outcome supports this understanding, showing that people who focus on the process of their activities, on how they do things, rather than just what they achieve, are more resilient, more creative, and more satisfied with their lives. They are better able to adapt to setbacks because their sense of value is not tied exclusively to outcomes. As the months pass, the two monks continue their daily chore, but their understanding of it has transformed. They no longer see it as a burden to be endured, but as a practice to be cherished, a way to connect with the mountain, with each other, and with the present moment. One day, a traveler passes through the temple, noticing Hui carrying the bamboo basket. That's a foolish way to carry water, he says. Don't you know baskets can't hold water? Hui smiles. Of course, he says. But if you look closely, you'll see it's already carrying something far more precious. The traveler looks confused, but Hui doesn't explain further. Some lessons he has learned can't be put into words, they have to be experienced. Like carrying a bamboo basket down a mountain path, watching the water flow through, and realizing that sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones that can't be held. Let's return to our breath now, as we prepare for tonight's practice. 4 hours, 22 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the lightness of the bamboo basket, the crispness of the mountain air. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any attachment to usefulness or success. As you breathe, imagine yourself walking the path to the spring, carrying your own bamboo basket. Notice how it feels to let go of the need to achieve or accomplish, to simply be present with the journey. Notice the beauty around you, the sounds, the smells, the sensations in your body. These are the gifts that the bamboo basket carries, the things we miss when we're focused only on the water in the cistern. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the wisdom of the empty basket. Tonight's practice, as you drift towards sleep tonight, bring to mind a task or goal that has been weighing on you, a project, a responsibility, or something you feel you should be accomplishing. Imagine approaching this task with a bamboo basket instead of a bucket. What would it mean to let go of the pressure to succeed or achieve in the usual way? What might you notice if you weren't focused only on the outcome? As you breathe, imagine yourself engaging with this task, not as a burden or a challenge, but as a path, a journey with its own wisdom and beauty, regardless of the destination. If thoughts of failure or inadequacy arise, acknowledge them, then gently return to the image of the bamboo basket. Remember that some of life's most valuable experiences can't be measured by practical outcomes. Repeat silently to yourself, I release my attachment to outcomes. I embrace the journey. I am enough, even when I carry nothing but awareness. Before we move to the next story, carry with you the image of Hui and Z walking down the path together, one with a bucket, one with a basket, each moving in rhythm with the mountain's breath. The bucket glimmers with the weight of its purpose. The basket sways with the lightness of presence. Neither is complete without the other. Just as our lives find balance in both doing and being. As you settle into stillness, let the image of the bamboo basket linger in your mind. See its woven gaps not as flaws, but as window spaces that allow life to flow through, unheld and unhindered. In those gaps, you might catch a glimpse of what lies beyond achievement, the quiet joy of simply existing, of walking a path with no need to prove its worth. When you wake tomorrow, carry this awareness with you. Approach one small task not as a bucket to fill, but as a basket to hold loosely, openly, with room for unexpected beauty. Notice how the weight lifts when you stop clinging to enough and start trusting that every step, every breath, is already full of meaning. The bamboo basket teaches us that the most precious cargo is the awareness of carrying it. And in that awareness, we find that we are never truly empty. We are always, in every moment, carrying the fullness of life itself. Let the lightness of the bamboo basket stay with you as we journey now to a place of slow, steady motion and the earthy wisdom of age. The crisp mountain air fades, replaced by the warm, nutty aroma of freshly ground grain and the subtle scent of wood smoke from a nearby hearth. The sound of footsteps on a dirt path gives way to the rhythmic creak of wood and the soft grinding of stone against stone. We find ourselves in a small village at the foot of the mountains, where time seems to move to the rhythm of the seasons, rather than the ticking of clocks. At the center of the village stands a structure unlike any other, a large ancient stone mill, its two massive stones turning slowly, powered by a water wheel that dips into a gentle stream. The mill has been here for generations, its stones worn smooth by the passage of time and the endless grinding of grain into flour. Tending to the mill is an old man named Chun, his hands calloused from decades of work, his face lined with the stories of a long life. He moves with the deliberate slowness of someone who has learned that rushing accomplishes little. Each morning, he arrives at the mill before dawn, checks the water flow, adjusts the stones, and begins the day's work grinding wheat, rice, and corn for the villagers. The mill is more than just a tool for Chun. It is a living thing, a friend, that has served his family for over 100 years. He knows every creak of its wooden beams, every whisper of its stones, every change in its rhythm that signals something is amiss. "Good morning, old friend," he says each day, patting the large stone that sits atop the mill, its surface smooth as glass from years of use. "Shall we make some flour?" The stone, of course, does not reply, but the steady grinding that follows feels like a response, a quiet affirmation of the partnership between man and machine, between tradition and function. This peaceful rhythm is disrupted one morning by the arrival of a stranger in the village. He drives a large truck that kicks up dust as it rumbles down the main road, coming to a stop near the stone mill. The stranger, young, dressed in crisp, new clothes, with a clipboard in his hand, steps out and surveys the mill with a critical eye. "That thing is ancient," he says to no one in particular, loud enough for Chun to hear. "You people are living in the past. I've got a machine in the back of my truck that can grind 10 times as much grain in half the time, with none of this mess." Chun looks up from his work, wiping his hands on a rag. He has heard rumors of such machines' metal contraptions, powered by electricity, with sharp blades that turn grain into flour in an instant. But he has never seen one and has no desire to. "The mill has served us well for 100 years, he says simply, returning to his task of feeding grain into the small opening between the stones. The stranger laughs. "Served you well?" "It's slow, inefficient, and takes up half the village square. My machine is the future, clean, fast, modern." Chun says nothing, but continues his work. He has learned over the years that some people need to learn lessons for themselves. Over the next few days, the stranger sets up his machine in a small shed on the edge of the village. He demonstrates it for the villagers, showing how quickly it can turn a sack of wheat into fine, white flour. Many are impressed by its speed and efficiency. A few begin to bring their grain to him instead of to Chun's mill. You see? The stranger says to Chun one afternoon, as the stone mill turns. Slowly in the background, "Progress, your old mill will be a museum piece by winter." Chun nods, but does not stop working. The machine is fast, he admits, but fast is not always best. The stranger scoffs. What do you know about best? You've been stuck in the same routine for decades. Perhaps, Chun says, carefully collecting the freshly ground flour in a cloth bag. But come back in a year, and we'll see which one is still serving the village. This is the first lesson of the stone mill. There is wisdom in the slow, steady rhythm of tradition, even in a world that values speed and efficiency. The stone mill does not grind grain quickly, but it grinds it thoroughly, preserving the nutrients and flavor that can be lost in faster processes. In the same way, many of life's most valuable things, relationships, skills, wisdom, develop slowly through consistent, patient effort. The Buddha taught this in the Dhammapada, where he said, "Just as a great river gradually fills the ocean, so too does wisdom gradually fill the mind of one who practices diligently." Dhammapada 282. This diligence is not the frantic hurry of the stranger's machine, but the steady, patient effort of Chun tending his mill in the Anguttara Nikaya. The Buddha compared the path of practice to the work of a potter, just as a potter's wheel turns again and again to shape the clay, so too must a monk practice again and again to shape the mind. Anguttara Nikaya 3.134. This repeated, patient practice, like the turning of the stone mill, eventually transforms what is raw into something refined. Modern psychology research supports this understanding, showing that deliberate practice, slow, focused, repeated effort is more effective for developing skills than rushed, unfocused work. Studies have demonstrated that experts in any field, whether music, sports, or craftsmanship, develop their abilities through thousands of hours of slow, intentional practice, not through quick, superficial efforts. Neuroscience helps explain why, showing that the brain develops new neural connections most effectively through repeated, focused activity. Like the stone mill gradually wearing away at the grain, these repeated efforts gradually shape the brain, creating the pathways that allow for mastery. Let's take a moment to connect with this slow, steady wisdom. 4 hours, 40 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, smelling the warm aroma of freshly ground grain. Hold it for a moment, and exhale slowly, releasing any sense of hurry or urgency. As you breathe, bring to mind something in your life that develops slowly, perhaps a relationship, a skill, or a personal quality like patience or kindness. Notice any impatience you might feel about its pace. Do you wish it would develop faster? Do you compare it to the speed of others' lives or achievements? Now, imagine approaching this thing like Chun tending his stone mill, with patience, consistency, and trust in the process. Imagine valuing its quality over its speed, its depth over its pace. With your next exhale, imagine softening into this slower rhythm, allowing things to develop in their own time through your steady, consistent effort. This is the practice of honoring the wisdom of the stone mill, the understanding that some things cannot be rushed. As the weeks pass, the villagers divide into two groups: those who prefer the speed of the stranger's machine, and those who remain loyal to Chun's stone mill. The stranger's flour is wider, finer, and available more quickly. Chun's flour is coarser, with a richer flavor and a slightly golden hue. At first, the stranger's business thrives. Villagers who are in a hurry, or who are attracted to the modern approach, bring their grain to him. But gradually, things begin to change. The stranger's machine, it turns out, is not as reliable as he claimed. It breaks down frequently, requiring parts that have to be brought from the city. When it works, it sometimes heats up, burning the flour or leaving it unevenly ground. And while it is fast when it works, the time spent waiting for repairs often makes it slower than the stone mill in the long run. Chun's mill, meanwhile, continues to turn steadily. It rarely breaks down, and when it does, Chun can usually fix it with simple tools and his own knowledge. It runs on the power of the stream, which never runs dry, rather than on electricity, which occasionally fails in the village. One day, during a heavy rainstorm, the village loses power. The stranger's machine falls silent, leaving several villagers waiting for their flour. Chun's mill, however, continues to turn, powered by the swollen stream. The villagers who had been waiting for the machine reluctantly bring their grain to Chun. "This is good flour," one of them says, tasting a pinch of the freshly ground wheat. "I'd forgotten how much better it tastes than the machines." Chun smiles. "The mill has been doing this work for a long time," he says. "It knows what it's doing." This is the second lesson of the stone mill. There is resilience in simplicity and connection to natural rhythms. The stone mill is simple in design, with few parts that can break, and it is powered by a natural resource, the stream, that is renewable and reliable. In the same way, lives and practices that are grounded in simple, natural rhythms often prove more resilient than those dependent on complex, artificial systems. The Buddha taught this as the middle way, which avoids dependence on extremes of luxury or hardship, but also emphasizes living in harmony with the natural world. In the Samyutta Nikaya, he said, "Just as a tree bends in the wind but does not break, so too does the wise person adapt to circumstances without losing their center." Samyutta Nikaya 2.92. This adaptability, like the stone mill's ability to continue working through the storm, comes from being grounded in simple, natural principles. Modern psychology research on ecological resilience supports this understanding, showing that systems, whether ecosystems, communities, or individuals that are overly complex or dependent on external resources, are more vulnerable to disruption than those that are simpler and more self-reliant. As the months pass, more villagers return to Chun's stone mill. They miss the flavor of his flour, and they appreciate the reliability of the mill, especially during the frequent power outages in the winter. The stranger, frustrated by the frequent breakdowns and declining business, begins to spend more time watching Chun work. He notices how Chun listens to the mill, how he can tell by the sound alone if the stones need adjustment or if the grain is too dry. He sees how Chun treats the mill with respect, cleaning it carefully each night and making small repairs before they become big problems. One afternoon, as Chun is oiling the wooden gears of the mill, the stranger approaches him. "How do you know so much about this thing?" he asks, genuine curiosity in his voice. Chun wipes his hands and gestures to the mill. "I grew up with it," he says. "My father taught me, just as his father taught him. You learn to listen to it, to understand its language. It tells you what it needs." He points to the water wheel. "The stream is not always the same. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes slow. You have to adjust the mill accordingly. The stones need to be checked every day. Too tight, and they burn the grain. Too loose, and they don't grind it fine enough." It's a conversation, really. The stranger thinks about this. "My machine doesn't have a conversation," he says. "It just works, or it doesn't." "Exactly," Chun says. "It's not a conversation, it's a command. And machines don't like to be commanded forever. They break." This is the third lesson of the stone mill. True mastery comes from partnership, not domination. Chun does not command the mill. He works with it, listening to its needs and responding accordingly. In the same way, we achieve mastery not by trying to dominate our circumstances, our skills, or even our own minds, but by developing a relationship with them, listening, adapting, cooperating. The Buddha expressed this in his teaching of Paticcasamuppada, dependent origination, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is part of a complex web of relationships and dependencies. Mastery, then, is not about controlling this web, but about understanding and working with it. Modern psychology research on flow states supports this understanding, showing that peak performance occurs not when we are struggling to control a situation, but when we enter a state of harmonious interaction with it. In flow states, we are not separate from what we are doing. We are in partnership with it, like Chun and his mill. As the seasons change, the stranger's machine breaks down completely, beyond his ability to repair. Instead of leaving the village, however, he approaches Chun with an unusual request. "Will you teach me to use the mill?" He asks. "I've seen that there's more to it than I thought. I want to learn." Chun is surprised, but agrees. Over the next few months, he teaches the young man everything he knows: the proper way to adjust the stones, how to read the stream's flow, when to add more grain, when to let the mill rest. The stranger, whose name, it turns out, is Li, proves to be a quick learner. He brings his own knowledge to the work, suggesting small improvements to the mill's wooden gears that make it run more smoothly without changing its essential nature. Together, they create a new rhythm in the mill. Chun's deep knowledge of tradition, combined with Li's fresh perspective. The mill continues to grind grain slowly, steadily, but now it does so with a few subtle improvements that make it even more efficient. "This is better than either of our ways alone," Chun says one afternoon, watching the mill turn with its new, improved gears. Li nods. "I thought speed was everything," he says, "but I see now that it's about finding the right speed, not too fast, not too slow, and knowing when to keep things the same and when to change." This is the fourth lesson of the stone mill. Wisdom lies in balancing tradition and innovation, not in clinging to one or rejecting the other. The stone mill is not perfect, as it is Li's improvements make it better, but neither is it improved by replacing it entirely with something new. The best approach is to honor what works in tradition while being open to beneficial change. The Buddha taught this as the Kalama Sutta principle, which encourages us to test teachings and practices against our own experience, rather than accepting them blindly or rejecting them outright. Do not go by tradition, do not go by hearsay, but when you know for yourselves that these things are unwholesome, these things are blameworthy, these things are disapproved of by the wise, then you should abandon them. Anguttara Nikaya 3.65. Modern psychology calls this adaptive conservatism, the ability to preserve what is valuable from the past while adapting to new circumstances. Research shows that this balance is associated with both personal and cultural resilience, allowing for continuity while still permitting growth and change. As the years pass, Chun grows older and eventually passes away, but the stone mill continues to turn. Li takes over its care, passing on what he learned from Chun to his own children, along with his own innovations. The mill becomes a symbol of the village's ability to honor its past while embracing its future. Visitors to the village often ask why they continue to use the old mill when there are faster machines available. Li's answer is always the same. "Because some things are worth doing slowly," he says, patting the ancient stone as Chun once did. "And because this mill is more than a machine. It's a teacher. It teaches us patience, consistency, and respect for the work itself." He pauses, watching as the grain is ground into flour, slowly, steadily, perfectly. "It reminds us that the best things in life aren't rushed," he says. "They're earned, through time and care and attention. Let's return to our breath now as we prepare for tonight's practice. 4 hours 57 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the steady rhythm of the stone mill, the warmth of its stones, the earthy aroma of freshly ground grain. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any need to hurry or rush. As you breathe, imagine yourself standing beside the mill, watching its slow, steady turning. Feel the ground beneath your feet, solid and stable, like the wisdom of tradition. Feel the movement of the water, flowing and adapting, like the potential for change. Notice how these two forces, stability and change, work together to create something useful and beautiful. This is the balance the stone mill teaches us. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the rhythm of the mill. Tonight's practice. As you drift towards sleep tonight, bring to mind an area of your life where you feel pulled between tradition and change, perhaps a habit you're considering altering, a relationship that needs to evolve, or a skill you're trying to develop while honoring the way it's always been done. Imagine this area of your life as the stone mill. What parts of it are like the ancient stones, valuable, reliable, worth preserving? What parts might benefit from a small improvement, like last adjustments to the gears? As you breathe, imagine finding the right speed for this area of your life, not rushing change, but also not resisting it unnecessarily. Imagine approaching it with the patience of Chun and the openness of Li, honoring what works while remaining open to what could be better. If thoughts of too slow or too fast arise, acknowledge them, then gently return to the image of the stone mill, turning steadily, perfectly, at its own rhythm. Repeat silently to yourself, I honor the wisdom of the past. I welcome the potential of the future. I find my balance in the steady rhythm of now. Before we move to the next story, carry with you the image of the stone mill turning slowly beside the stream. Its ancient stones still doing their work, improved but not replaced, a testament to the wisdom of balance between tradition and change. One last deep breath, and let it carry you into the quiet, steady rhythm of your own life, a rhythm that honors both the stones of your past and the potential of your future. Let the steady rhythm of the stone mill stay with you as we journey now to a place of simplicity and sustenance, where the most profound lessons come in the humblest forms. The warm aroma of freshly ground grain fades, replaced by the savory scent of simmering broth and the earthy smell of clay. The creak of wooden gears gives way to the soft clink of bowls and the murmur of voices in a small village inn. We find ourselves in a humble eatery at the crossroads of two well-traveled paths. The walls are made of sun-baked clay, the roof of thatched straw. A large hearth crackles in one corner, where a pot of vegetable stew simmers gently over low flames. The tables are rough-hewn wooden planks, each surrounded by simple stools. It is evening, and the inn is filling with travelers, merchants with their wares, farmers returning from the fields, pilgrims on their way to distant temples. Among them is a monk in simple robes, his head shaved, a begging bowl tucked under his arm. He moves with quiet grace, his eyes clear and calm, as if he carries the peace of the mountains with him. The innkeeper, a woman named Lin, bustles about, serving bowls of stew and mugs of hot tea. She is known throughout the region for her generosity and her wisdom, though she would never claim such a thing. To her, running the inn is simply a way of serving others, of practicing kindness in the small, daily moments. When the monk approaches the counter, Lin smiles and reaches for a bowl. But instead of filling it immediately, she pauses, looking at the bowl in her hands. It is a simple clay bowl, its surface unadorned, its edges slightly chipped from years of use. May I ask you a question, revered one? She says. The monk nods, his expression curious. Of course, kind one. Lin holds up the empty bowl. What is the most important quality of this bowl? The monk looks at the bowl, then back at Lin. "It's emptiness," he says simply. Lin smiles, as if she had been expecting this answer. "And why is that?" "Because if it were not empty," the monk says, "it could not be filled. Its purpose, to hold food, to nourish, depends entirely on its ability to be empty first." Lin nods, then fills the bowl with steaming stew, its aroma rich with carrots, turnips, and herbs. "You understand," she says, handing the bowl to the monk. "So many people come here with bowls that are already full of opinions, full of plans, full of judgments. They cannot receive what is offered because there is no space." The monk takes the bowl, bowing his head in thanks. "This is the way of the world," he says. "We cling to what we know, to what we think we need, and in doing so, we close ourselves off from new possibilities." He finds a small table in the corner, sitting down to eat his stew slowly, savoring each bite. Around him, the other travelers talk loudly, arguing about politics, complaining about the weather, boasting of their accomplishments, their bowls, in Lin's words, already full. This is the first lesson of the empty bowl. True receptivity begins with emptiness. A bowl can only hold what is new if it is first emptied of what was before. In the same way, our minds can only receive new ideas, new experiences, new wisdom if we are willing to let go of what we already know, what we think we need, what we are clinging to. The Buddha taught this as the practice of sunyata emptiness, not as a void or absence, but as the absence of fixed, independent existence, and thus the potential for all things. In the Prajnaparamita Sutras, he said, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." This means that all things are constantly changing, constantly becoming, and thus have the potential to be filled with new life, new meaning, new possibilities. In the Dhammapada, he described the wise person as one who comes with an empty mind. Ready to learn, the wise person, after listening to the Dharma, becomes peaceful, serene, and undisturbed, like a deep, clear lake. Dhammapada 81. A deep, clear lake is like an empty bowl. It can reflect whatever is placed before it without distortion. Modern psychology research supports this understanding, showing that beginner's mind, a state of openness, curiosity, and lack of preconceptions, is associated with greater creativity, better learning, and more effective problem solving. Studies have demonstrated that people who approach tasks with beginner's mind are more likely to notice details, make connections, and find innovative solutions than those who approach them with fixed ideas. Neuroscience helps explain why, showing that the brain's default mode network, the part associated with self-referential thinking and rigid patterns of thought, is less active in states of openness and curiosity, allowing for more flexible, adaptive thinking. Like an empty bowl, the brain is better able to receive and process new information when it is not filled with pre-existing thoughts and judgments. Let's take a moment to experience this emptiness for ourselves. 5 hours, 15 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, smelling the aroma of Lin's stew, feeling the warmth of the hearth. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any thoughts, any judgments, any clinging to what you know. As you breathe, imagine your mind as an empty bowl, simple, unadorned, ready to receive. Notice what arises to fill it, perhaps a worry, a plan, a memory. Acknowledge it, then imagine pouring it out, emptying the bowl again. With each exhale, feel yourself becoming more empty, more open, more receptive to whatever might come next. Is the practice of cultivating the empty bowl within making space for new life, new wisdom, new possibilities. After finishing his stew, the monk returns his bowl to Lin, who refills it with hot tea. "You speak of emptiness," she says, wiping her hands on her apron. "But many would say that emptiness is a kind of poverty, and to be empty is to lack something." The monk takes a sip of tea, savoring its warmth. It is a common misunderstanding. He says, emptiness is not poverty. Poverty is the lack of what we need. Emptiness is the absence of what we do not need: the clutter, the attachments, the things that weigh us down. He gestures to his simple robes. I own little, yet I lack nothing. The traveler who carries 100 possessions often feels poor because he fears losing them. I carry few possessions, and so I am rich in freedom. Lin nods, thinking of the merchants in her inn, counting their coins, worrying about their profits. It is true, she says. The more people have, the more they seem to want. They fill their bowls to overflowing, yet they are never satisfied. This is the nature of craving, the monk says. It is like trying to fill a bowl with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it is never enough. The Buddha taught this as the second noble truth. Samudaya, the origin of suffering, is craving. In the Dhammacappa Sutta, he said, and this, monks, is the origin of suffering, the craving which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. Samyutta Nikaya 56.11. This craving is the opposite of the empty bowl. It is the endless attempt to fill ourselves with more, without ever. Recognizing that our true capacity for satisfaction lies in our ability to be empty, to be enough, as we are taught. Modern psychology research on materialism supports this understanding, showing that people who are highly materialistic, those who seek happiness through acquiring possessions, report lower levels of life satisfaction, higher levels of anxiety and depression, and more strained relationships than those who are less focused on material goods. This is the hole in the bowl phenomenon. The more we try to fill ourselves with things, the more we realize how empty we feel. As the evening progresses, a wealthy merchant enters the inn, his fine clothes and elaborate jewelry marking him as a man of status. He demands the best table, the finest food, complaining loudly when Lin tells him that all tables are taken and the only food left is the same stew everyone else is eating. I am not like these common people, he says, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I deserve better. Lin remains calm. Sir, all our bowls are the same here, she says. They hold the same food, nourish the same bodies. The only difference is in how full they are when they arrive. The merchant scoffs, but takes a seat at the only available table next to the monk. He orders a bowl of stew, but eats it quickly, barely tasting it, his mind clearly elsewhere. This food is terrible, he says to the monk. Not at all what I'm used to. The monk looks up from his tea. It is the same stew I ate, he says. Perhaps your bowl was not empty enough to taste it. The merchant looks confused. What do you mean? I mean that you came here with your bowl already full of expectations, full of judgments, full of the belief that you are better than others, the monk says. There was no space for the stew to be what it is. You tasted only your own expectations. This is the second lesson of the empty bowl. Our expectations and judgments prevent us from experiencing things as they are. The merchant's bowl was full of his own ideas about what he deserved, what was good enough, and thus, he could not taste the simple goodness of the stew. In the same way, our minds are often so full of what we think should be that we cannot see or appreciate what is. The Buddha taught this as the practice of vipassana insight meditation, which involves seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. In the Majjhima Nikaya, he said, one sees things as they are. One understands the nature of form, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness, their origin, their cessation, their satisfaction, their unsatisfactoriness, their escape. Majjhima Nikaya 140. This seeing requires an empty bowl, a mind free from preconceptions, judgments, and expectations. Modern psychology research on mindfulness supports this understanding, showing that mindfulness practice reduces the influence of expectations and judgments on our experience, allowing us to perceive things more accurately and appreciate them more fully. Studies have demonstrated that mindful people are better able to savor positive experiences, cope with negative ones, and maintain a balanced perspective on life's ups and downs. The merchant is angered by the monk's words, but something in them resonates. He thinks about his life, how he is always chasing the next deal, the next luxury, never satisfied, always comparing what he has to what others have. He realizes that he cannot remember the last time he truly enjoyed a meal, or conversation, or a moment of peace. "Perhaps you are right," he says finally, his voice softer. "I have spent my life filling my bowl, but I have never learned to empty it." The monk smiles. "It is never too late to learn," he says. "The first step is to recognize that the bowl is yours to fill or empty as you choose." Over the next hour, the merchant sits quietly, listening as the monk and Lin talk about the nature of emptiness, not as a lack, but as a freedom. He begins to see that his wealth, his status, his possessions have filled his bowl to overflowing, leaving no space for the things that might truly nourish him: connection, gratitude, presence. Before leaving, he approaches Lin, placing a handful of coins on the counter. "For the stew," he says. "It was better than I first thought." Lin smiles, returning all but one coin. "One coin is enough for the stew," she says. "The rest is for you to put in an empty bowl." The merchant nods, understanding. He leaves the inn with a lighter step, as if some of the weight of his full bowl has been lifted. This is the third lesson of the empty bowl. Emptiness is a choice, and it brings freedom. The merchant chose to begin emptying his bowl, and in doing so, he experienced a taste of freedom from the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. In the same way, we can choose to empty our minds of the thoughts, judgments, and attachments that weigh us down, and in doing so, experience the freedom of being present, of being enough. The Buddha taught this as the third noble truth, Nirodha, the cessation of suffering is possible through the letting go of craving. In the Dhammacappa Pavatthavan Sutta, he said, "And this, monks, is the cessation of suffering, the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it." Samyutta Nikaya 56.11. This cessation is not the elimination of desire, but the freedom to choose which desires we hold and which we let go of, like choosing what to put in our bowl and what to leave out. Modern psychology research on intentional simplicity supports this understanding, showing that people who choose to live more simply with fewer possessions, less busyness, more focus on what is essential report higher levels of happiness, greater life satisfaction, and stronger relationships than those who live more complex, cluttered lives. This is the freedom of the empty bowl. The less we carry, the more we can move, the more we can receive, the more we can appreciate. As the inn closes for the night, Lin and the monk sit together by the hearth, the last embers glowing softly. "You have taught many lessons tonight," Lin says. The monk shakes his head. "I have only reminded people of what they already know," he says. "The wisdom of the empty bowl is in all of us, waiting to be remembered." He picks up his own begging bowl, now empty, turning it in his hands. "This bowl is my teacher," he says. "It reminds me to be empty, to be open, to be grateful for whatever is placed in it. Some days it is filled with rich food, some days with scraps, some days with nothing at all. But in its emptiness, it is always full of potential, full of freedom, full of the possibility of what might come next." Lin nods, thinking of all the bowls she has filled over the years, all the travelers who have passed through her inn, I think I will hang an empty bowl above the door, she says, to remind people as they enter empty your bowl, and you will be nourished. This is the fourth lesson of the empty bowl. Emptiness is not a destination, but a practice. The monk's bowl is not empty once and for all. It is emptied again and again, with each meal, with each day, with each new experience. In the same way, our practice of emptiness is not about reaching a state of permanent detachment, but about cultivating the habit of letting go of emptying our minds again and again, making space for whatever life brings us. The Buddha taught. This is the path of anicca impermanence, the understanding that all things are constantly changing, and thus our attachments are futile. In the Dhammapada, he said, all conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. Dhammapada 277. This striving is not the effort to hold on, but the effort to let go, to empty our bowls again and again, to meet each moment. With fresh eyes and an open heart, let's return to our breath now as we prepare for tonight's practice. 5 hours, 32 minutes elapsed. Take a deep breath in, feeling the warmth of the hearth, the gentle glow of the embers. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, releasing any attachments, any expectations, any judgments. As you breathe, imagine your mind as an empty bowl, sitting quietly by the fire. Notice how peaceful it is, this emptiness, not a lack, but a fullness of potential. With each inhale, imagine breathing in fresh, new air, filling the bowl with possibility. With each exhale, imagine breathing out any thoughts, any clutter, emptying the bowl again. This is the rhythm of the empty bowl, filling and emptying, receiving and releasing, in harmony with the breath. This brings us to our practice for tonight, which we'll call the Empty Bowl Meditation. Tonight's practice, as you drift towards sleep tonight, imagine yourself holding an empty bowl in your hands. Feel its weight, its texture, its simplicity. Notice what arises in your mind: thoughts, worries, plans, memories. Imagine placing each one gently in the bowl, watching as it settles there. Now, imagine tipping the bowl slightly, pouring out its contents. Watch as the thoughts, worries, plans, and memories flow away, leaving the bowl empty again. Repeat this process with anything that arises, placing it in the bowl, then pouring it out, making space for the next moment, the next breath. As you do this, repeat silently to yourself: I empty my bowl. I make space. I am open to what is. If you find yourself clinging to a particular thought or feeling, acknowledge it with kindness. Then imagine pouring it out anyway, not because it is bad, but because you choose to make space for what might come next. Remember that the goal is not to have an empty mind forever, but to cultivate the ability to empty it when needed, to choose what fills your bowl, rather than letting it be filled by habit, by fear, by craving. Before we move to the next story, carry with you the image of the empty bowl by the hearth, its surface reflecting the soft glow of the embers, ready to receive whatever comes next. Remember that in your own emptiness, you are not lacking. You are full of potential, full of freedom, full of the wisdom to know that sometimes the most nourishing thing is to simply be empty, and to trust that what is needed will find its way. Take one last deep breath, feeling the weight of the empty bowl in your hands, light yet full of possibility. Let it carry you into sleep, where your mind can rest in its natural state of emptiness, ready to receive the dreams, the peace, and the renewal that come when we stop trying to fill every space. As we traversed streams, gardens, and moonlit paths, ancient wisdom has seeped into the heart like dew. May these truths be your dreams' lighthouse and morning light upon waking. Thank you for sharing this journey from Zen Mind Temple. Peace resides always within you.